Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second Mayor and City Council combined meeting for the day, Monday, May 12th, 2025. If you'd please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Please show the current council of the Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Tillman. We will now go into oath of office. So first up, I'm going to go by order of papers I have here. Rachel Miller, come on up. I, Rachel Miller, that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the laws thereof, that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment, diligently and faithfully, without partiality or prejudice, sworn in. Okay, up next we got right hand and repeat after me. I, Harry Mead,
I, Harry Mead,
do swear that I will support
do swear
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
and that I will be faithful and bear true
allegiance
to the state of Maryland, laws thereof,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment, the office of council member laws of this state.
according to the
Kalana.
Like raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Stephen Nick
Kalana.
do swear that I will support the Constitution
I, Stephen Nick Kalanock, do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
and support the Constitution
and support the Constitution
and laws thereof,
and laws thereof,
and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment,
and that I will, to the best of my skill and
diligently and faithfully,
diligently,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
council member,
execute the office of council member
according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
according to the Constitution and laws of this state. All right.
Photo of everybody here.
Yeah, you guys want to, council, if you don't mind? Let's go ahead and get a group photo real quick.
All right. We'll get him later.
Different, that's for sure. Okay, up first, we have election of Mayor Pro Tem. I will entertain nominations.
I nominate Rachel Miller.
Okay, we'll go to voting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Carries. Congratulations, Mayor Pro Tem. Up next, we have council liaison assignments. Starting from the left, Councilmember Kalanock.
There you go.
We'll give you Parks and Rec.
Good.
Mayor Pro Tem Miller will give you Police Department. Councilmember Mead, we will give you Planning and Zoning. Councilmember Tillman, we will give you Economic Development. Councilmember McCarron, Public Works. With that, Jim, did you get all the assignments? Sounds good. Up next, we have councilmember statement regarding conflicts of interest on agenda items. Would any councilmember like to declare a conflict of interest?
On the agenda?
Oh, got it. Nope, never mind. I thought we were getting paper copies.
No, I asked.
Only if you
for
elect.
one.
If you elect after this, they'll have a paper copy for you.
Okay. Do you mind if I,
Okay, up next, we have Proclamation Poppy Day. For anybody not familiar, this year, May 23rd, around the nation, they're looking to declare the May 23rd as Poppy Day. I'm gonna read off the proclamation. We're gonna get it signed, and I'm gonna distribute out some poppies out to council members at the end of this to distribute to friends, family, and we're also gonna try to get some out to businesses. Proclamation, City of Taneytown, Maryland. Whereas America is the land of freedom, preserved and protected willingly and freely by citizen soldiers, whereas millions who have answered the call to arms have died on the field of battle, whereas a nation at peace must be reminded of the price of war and the debt owed to those who have died in war, whereas the red poppy has been designated as a symbol of sacrifice of lives in all wars, and whereas the American Legion Auxiliary has pledged to remind America annually of this debt through the distribution of the memorial flower. Therefore, I, Christopher G. Miller, the mayor of the city of Taneytown, do hereby proclaim May 23rd, 2025 as Poppy Day and ask that all citizens pay tribute to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the name of freedom by wearing the memorial poppy on this day. In witness thereof, I have set my hand and caused to be affixed the official seal of the city of Taneytown on this day, May 12th, 2025. That is the proclamation. Again, I'm going to distribute some poppies out to council members at the end of this to give out to friends, family, and again, if you know of any businesses that'll take them, I'm going to be distributing them out to businesses as well. Yeah. Again, I want to thank the American Legion for bringing that to our attention and asking that we proclaim that. Whew. Up next, we have public comment pertaining to non-agenda items. Do we have public comment pertaining to non-agenda items?
Paul Cluth. Right. Resident and business owner in Taneytown, recent voter, and taxpayer. Seeing that economic development in Main Street wasn't on the agenda for tonight in this session, I wanted to encourage the new slate of councilmen not to let economic development, the hiring of the new director and Main Street manager, and the continuation of the Main Street workshop fall by the wayside. The turnaround of this department's failings over the past 18 months, partial failings, I'll clarify that, not entirely, but partial, has to be a top priority. I also want to encourage the new councilmen especially to get out and visit with the businesses, the business owners in the downtown, the Main Street area, outside of the downtown and within city limits, of course, and also the surrounding community to build rapport and to understand what the needs are of the business owners. Kind of get get in with the owners and understand how they feel and what their needs are. This also includes nonprofits, churches, and some of the farmers even, not to mention the senior center, the museum folk, and other stakeholder organizations. At the same time, I want to welcome the new councilman, and congratulations on winning your positions, you're winning the election. So that's all, but I just wanted to emphasize that. And I guess, Harry, since you're going to be the overseer of economic development.
Tillman.
Oh,
Councilmember Tillman.
okay, I'm sorry.
I'm planning and zoning.
Planning and zoning. Well, you kind of crisscross a little bit.
Sorry to cross you
Well-
up like that, Paul.
Well, Chris, look forward to continued discussions about economic development and all the good things that the city can become.
I don't think that there could be any doubt of where my passions lie
That's
in that particular matter.
guy for the job.
I look forward to moving the ship forward in the several directions that it needs to go.
I'm looking forward to seeing, from a personal standpoint, that this can be a home run and can be a real positive thing for the community. Certainly is a stronghold because it has implications across everything in the town.
And I
Thank
do
you.
want, sorry, Paul, I just want to clarify two things. On the appointment, we're hoping to have an appointment within the next 2 weeks. We're still working on some background stuff. In addition to that, while it's not in the name of any of the introductions or adoptions for the legislative priority, I know it's in the legislative priority for within, I think, 90 days to have the Main Street Committee back up and running, or at least the framework of one. So it is on their minds. It is a topic of concern, and again, we'll see how that goes as we get down the chart here. But I want you to note, it hasn't fallen by the wayside on anyone. It's just when we went through the process of finding the EDC, it was asked that we went through the full process of it. So, and unfortunately, that does kind of drag it out a little bit.
It can be a team effort, with the businesses and city council and mayor and city, and that's the way it should be. And I think that's the direction that it can easily go. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Any additional public comment pertaining to non-agenda items? Hearing none, proceeding forward. We have a bunch of resolutions, ordinances, and agreements up tonight. First off, we'll start off with Ordinance 06-2025, fiscal year 2025-2026 operating budget. Again, this is a combined meeting, so I'm going to ask for a motion, a second, and then we'll go into discussion. So first, I'm going to ask for a motion in regards to that operating budget.
Approve.
Looking for a second.
We can't be approving that right
Oh,
now.
my bad.
Introduction.
Introduction.
Oh, I'm sorry, motion to
Motion
introduce.
to introduce. Looking for a second.
Second.
Comments, questions, concerns? Open it up to the floor of council for that.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. It's a lot of information here. So, on the first page, the fund balance, is that the remaining fund balance after allocations have been made to this budget? The two general fund balance figure, the general fund and utility fund balance? Are those after allocations?
Give me a minute to pull it up.
Okay. I'm looking for it.
Oh, here it is.
Talking page 1, budgeted use of fund balance section, correct?
Yes, yes, sir. I just wanted to clarify what that number represented.
All right, can you point to me?
I'm looking, what I was asking was, is this money being used out of the fund balance, or is this what's left of the
Is it
fund
the
balance?
starting
That's
point?
Well,
or the end?
that's
That's
what's
coming out.
used.
That's coming
That's
out
what's
of
being
capital.
used. Sorry.
That's coming for the capital
All right.
projects.
Okay, so this is what's being taken out of utility fund and
For
out of
capital,
general fund?
yep, for
All
capital
right.
projects.
I just want to be sure what the number represented, that's all.
Right, Jim, I'm correct in that, right? That's numbers coming out for capital projects.
Sorry, I'm having
Okay.
trouble
Just making
finding
sure.
the.
Funds, got it.
latest.
Oh, there's mine is. I was wondering where that
I am,
So do you want I could go over kind of a base of what I did
if you
that's
want to,
different
if you
from
want to
the
do
current
that
budget?
first before I get into a, you
Yeah.
know, because I've got a few notes just all the way through the thing, but so I have just not a lot of questions, but.
So just what, some of the things that are different from our typical budget and this budget is we had some reductions across the departments, across the board there, and some of that's going to fund an additional police officer, and we're gonna be looking to put a police officer in the drug task force of Carroll County with that. Another was to fund a executive administrative assistant position, which will hopefully take off some of the burden of the city
discussed that in the
manager.
past, and that's a great idea to me.
And trying to think, what else, Jim? I know we have a 5% reduction to water and sewer rates that are currently budgeted in this budget, right?
Right.
Then, was there any other major changes that I'm forgetting?
I guess the highlights that I had noted was we're eliminating one crossing guard position. We're reclassing the police department secretary to adjust the salary there. We're adding 2 full-time equivalents, the executive administrative assistant and 1 police officer. And then, obviously, we, in order not to use more of fund balance to do those changes, we made cuts basically throughout all departments to be able to fund the 2 new positions.
One other thing in addition to that, for the crossing guard, part of the reason why we took that back is we're gonna be looking to put the rapid flashing beacons out there as kind of a substitute.
Sorry,
We
could you
never
say that
did,
one more
did we
time? I
ever
didn't
fill
catch
that position?
We
The
did
second
not, no.
Okay.
The rapid flashing beacons out there, over by the crossing walk at East, is it Keens Drive? Is that what it is out there,
Keens.
right? Yeah. So
Right.
Keens Drive out there where, you have the 4 crosswalks, you have the yellow signs, we're gonna put flashes on those essentially here in the future. But that's why we're taking away that crossing guard there. And the position never got filled. I think we only had, did we have additional applicants? I think we had 1 total.
I'm only aware of 1. And I don't know if that was formally applied or not. I think 1 expression of interest.
Yeah. And again, the current crossing guard, Roxanne, she's working out at Baumgartner Grape. I've only heard good things about that transition, so.
I mean, that's the real important one,
Yeah, that's the bigger one.
but I think the rapid flashing beacons will be a good,
I think it'll serve the purpose.
Getting the push button type so they activate and push the button and activate.
That's what I'm looking towards, yeah.
Just, other thing, there's, under utility fund, there's a $4 million grant. Is that the last of the ARPA funding? Going to pay for the Roberts Mill water line?
Can I ask you what page you're on?
This is the landscape sheet, it says page 1 of 1. It's the summary of the budget. It was like the second or third sheet in. I'm sorry.
Okay, the quick summary
I
page.
think you're talking about this one, right? The one
No, I'm
that starts
talking
with
about- No, he's talking-
local
well-
state tax revenue.
Might just be spread out, yeah, actually.
Oh, you know what I did?
This is it,
I did
yeah.
print it
That's
turned
what
that
had
way.
me confused.
Okay, there we are. All right. So,
I think this is the same, yeah.
yeah. So I just was looking, the
grant.
$4.3 million grant payment. I just wondered what that was. Is that the last?
That's the last of the ARPA that we
The
had
ARPA
allocated, right? I know some
I'm
of-
still not sure what line
No,
you're
good, it's
looking at.
going,
That's right. I printed it. I don't know.
you want me to bring it over your way, Jim?
So
Yeah, I
it's
think
you
you
looking
guys
at-
got it.
Is there a
under
page?
grant payments, under revenue for utility fund.
Okay, so we're looking at utility budget.
Yeah. And it looks like we're projecting a reduction in water and sewer usage, because we're projecting lower revenue figures there. And then there's the $4.3 million, which I assume is the ARPA funding for the water line work that we're doing and the last of the sewer work.
I finally scrolled down far
It
enough
looks like,
to.
I mean, I
to
can
find
see it also.
It's not that huge a deal. I'm just trying to clarify where that money came from and what it was for.
I mean, you can see, I think you can see the expenditure there in streets, so I'm assuming that's what it is.
And
Jim,
right,
have
I
you-
mean,
have
it's a
you
huge
figured out where
expenditure
we're
of
at?
capital outlay, so that's.
I'm still not, are you in
Here, let me,
utility or general fund?
We're-
This is utility fund.
Ability fund,
Yeah,
okay.
grant, this is grant payments, $4,391,952. I didn't mean to create such a,
Chaos, Chris.
everywhere I go.
All that is allocated.
We don't have that. No, this is, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you were looking over here, this is general fund side.
I'm just saying.
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one.
Okay.
I do not think that is ARPA. We don't have that much ARPA left.
Well, that's what I wondered about. That's why I wondered where, you know, where we got where $4 million in grant money came
Should
from.
only be around 2.
Yeah. So I just,
I mean, it would be nice.
yeah, so it's just, I mean, it shows as grant funding, or as grant payments, and so I was curious, where that came from. Other numbers that kind of jumped out at me, you know, economic development shows a decrease. We had a chat about that a few minutes ago. Public safety, obviously, the increase for the additional officer.
Yeah, they had decreases as well to offset some of that.
Yeah, I did notice that.
But I think, and again, I can't speak for everybody, but when we get to it, you know, I think my idea, at least from this current budget, is we need to get an EDC to, you know, and a director in, see what his goals is, see what his plans is, and kind of budget around what he's looking to try to do with the program, what he's looking to try to do with the position. Because if not, you know, we're just budgeting into the wind.
We can circle back to the grant. We're anticipating receiving funding for our PFAS, PFOA treatment. We have not, it has not been formally announced yet, though. So we're anticipating that award.
So that money obviously is promised out already for the filtering. All right. Legal number jumped out at me, but then I looked at you know, what we've spent current year, and that actually brings that into line.
And that's basically, I mean, that's all we were really trying to do, and with some of this
Yep.
is bringing into line.
Yep.
So while there are cuts, I mean, they're not,
I didn't see any draconian. I
yeah,
just wanted to.
they're nothing crazy.
A couple of things that raised questions when I was looking through this. And I noticed one of the other things that there was a professional fees in the 25 budget of 65,000 that we've dropped down to 15. But again, I just, looking back, I see we brought that back into line. I didn't know why that number was so high.
Well, that's what if you look through like a lot of it, you'll see that most of it is really just bringing it back into line with previous expenditures. Even, you know, if there was one thing that we talked about when we were taking from streets, and I think it was streets with the salt and whatnot, is that while we've had some, you know, slower years, money's definitely going back to general fund at the end of the year when we have 90,000 budgeted and we're only using 20,000 for the year.
We don't want to, you have to be careful about cutting the salt in particular that much, because
No,
you never know, you
but,
get a winter like we had last winter, so.
I mean, I agree in that regard, but my argument would be that, again, we've already, over the years of these past years where we've really had nothing, you know, you're talking 50,000 difference going back into that.
That's fine. Those were the questions that I had, the things that jumped out at me. So, I'm fine. Moving on.
Additional comments, questions, concerns regarding budget?
I would like to hear from council. So staff was directed to present a 5% cut on the utility fund, which we did. But for those who were pushing for that, I'm very curious as to how that is in the city's best interest. And I can certainly throw some numbers around on this one because I was coming prepared for this one, but I'm just very curious if any research was done. Why 5%? Why, is there something that, why are the rates, why do you believe the rates are higher than they need to be? I'm kind of drawing a blank on this other than people complain and it's popular to do.
Well, I was going to say, for me, it was probably aside from the traffic, probably the single most complained about thing that I heard about from people was water rates and them being very, very high. So I believe some of the thought process, at least for me, was to at least give a little bit of relief in that department. And then we've also got it later to where we reevaluate in a year to see where things are and how things are doing to make sure that we've been able to hit that and still maintain everything that we're supposed to be maintaining.
And I actually might kick it back to you and ask the question, like, is it drawing enough money for us to be able to implement the projects that we want to implement, right? Like, if it doesn't affect solvency or our ability to make capital improvements or anything like that, like I don't understand why you would necessarily need the additional excess, right? So like that's my biggest question always is, does it affect our ability to basically keep the system solvent? And if it doesn't, then I don't understand why we can't at least visit the rate. Like I'm not tied to 5% particularly, but that's kind of how I look at it, right? Is it solvent? Yes, no. If it is, what's your excess?
Right. So with anything with the budget, we can always shuffle stuff around and cover something on a temporary basis. So, we could do a lot of things for the short term. I would suggest that the current rates, considering this is an enterprise system, so it's supposed to be, basically the operation is supposed to be paying for itself through the user rates. Yep. So we need to have a surplus at the end of each year for beyond the day-to-day operations, so when something breaks or ages, we can repair it. I did throw together some figures. So over the last 5 years, the utility fund has come up with a surplus of $7.576 million over 5 years. There are $11.8 million worth of projects just for water and sewer projected for the next 5 years. So I would suggest that our existing user rates are not adequate to cover the long-term maintenance of the system. Now, this is also after we just received $6.7 million from the federal government through the American Rescue Plan Act. And of that, we put all of it to infrastructure. And $4.674 million of that fell out of the sky was used to fund deferred maintenance on the system. So we were gifted $4.5 million that went into the system to catch up on deferred maintenance, and we have had $7.5 million surplus over 5 years to pay for $11.8 million worth of projects. So I would suggest that the existing rates are not enough to sustain the system long-term. So again, you can do something on a short-term basis, but long-term...
What's the projected useful life of this $11 million project you brought up a couple of times? Like, if this useful life is 20 years, right, like, you're only looking at 5 years of $7 million, right? Like,
right. And this is just the 5-year window of, we typically do a 6-year capital improvement program. And we don't have anything planned at this point for that 6th year because we don't anticipate having the funds to really do anything with it. So some of the projects are, I don't have the specific projects in front of me, and we will share with you a draft capital improvement program at hopefully next week's meeting to help you get up to speed on what some of the system needs are. And those figures, by the way, do not include a facility for the Public Works Department. That's just water and sewer infrastructure.
For me,
So
do
the
you have
idea
cash
of
flow
a cut
projections
is
on this?
concerning. I'm sorry?
Do you have cash flow projections on this? I mean, ultimately, we're talking about like a net present value calculation. I know we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, right? So like, is this something that is done and available on this, or, because like, if, otherwise, this is kind of a vibes conversation, right? Like, if we don't have numbers, I'm very sympathetic to where you're coming from as kind of a numbers guy too, right? But it's hard to have these conversations without seeing actual numbers.
Sure. Sure.
And Jim, just to check, the 5% reduction, that comes out to 100 and, is that what it came out to? I thought it was 169 or something like that. But either way, that's 169 of 7 million put back over 5 years times 5. So again, I mean, it's still a large number, but a 5% relief for residents who are definitely already in a tough time right now, especially with everything going on. And again, the other proposal in this is basically a one-year readdress at a workshop that is dedicated to water, where again, we're going to look at all the data and everything like that, but a temporary reprieve of at least 5% while we're doing that, and we get that back, over the course of a year. That'll give staff time to prepare, that'll give staff the time to get everything together, but, I don't see a break in the bank here, and that's why I included it in the budget plan.
Okay. The point I'm making is if the rates were adequate to sustain the maintenance of the system, we would not have had $4 million worth of projects to catch up on. If we had the money to fix things and replace things as we needed to, we would do it. So that's my point. Can we float it for a year? Probably, but it's just going to put us that much farther behind, in the big picture, I guess.
And
So,
but the
and
other
I don't
question
see it as
that
being
engenders
sustainable.
is, how difficult it would be to go back and raise rates later on if we need to. If we cut the rates for a year and find out that, we've got this other project that we didn't realize we really, really, really need to do. Sure. Now we have to go back and ask to raise the rates again.
If you think people are unhappy now,
if we're drawing money out of the utility fund balance now, $2.5 million on these projects that we're catching up on, and we're only putting $1.5 million annually as an average back in. All right, we're already losing ground. We're already in a place where we are $1 million back from where we were this past year by just in the budget that we've written now, even if we didn't change the utility rates. So, while I'm not indifferent to the calls to lower our water and sewer rates, I'm cautionary about it because we have an aging system to maintain and replace.
My only problem with this is, again, we're talking $100 and maybe $69,000. And again, that's a 5% cut. Realistically, we could have gone higher for a trial run. But if the idea is, this 5% is what's really going to make or break the bank, and it's going to be hard to raise it back if we really need to, what it sounds to me like then is the next suggestion would be to raise rates, but obviously we're not going to do that when people are hurting right now. Again, my recommendation from the mayor's office to council would be a 5% reduction currently. And I don't believe it's unsustainable. Again, we'll readdress it in a year if we really need to. And again, there's provisions for that in here. And that's coming from both a place of sympathy for our residents who are obviously struggling with the water bills currently. And that's coming from a place of knowing that, this is not going to break our piggy bank. It's $169,000. And like you said, I'll be the one who takes the brunt of it if we do have to raise it.
well,
back
again,
to where it was.
it's not that it's going to bankrupt us in a year or anything. I'm not trying to raise that alarm. I'm just saying that structurally, over the long haul, the rates are not keeping up with the maintenance of the system. They're keeping up with the day-to-day and things like that, but then when we have to replace, you know, I'll use Westview Drive as an example. We're in the midst of a water line replacement there. That line has water leaks almost annually, usually in the winter, and we lose, you know, tens of thousands of gallons of finished water each time and have to go out and make a repair. So the line needs to be replaced. Those sort of projects have been funded at times from benefit assessment funds. Either we've borrowed money or we've used benefit assessment funds, which are the funds the developers pay to reimburse the city for the development of the water and sewer capacity. A lot of those projects aren't really capacity building projects, though. They're maintenance projects. So the money that we collect for benefit assessments or impact fees really should be paying back the city's expense to develop that capacity, not really operation and maintenance. But we tend to use it, and the argument can be, well, we're reducing leaks, and with reducing leaks or reducing inflow and infiltration on the wastewater side, we're creating additional capacity. So we can argue it away one way or the other. But again, just structurally, you know, if you earn just enough money to pay your bills and put food on the table, and then your car breaks down, where does that money for the car repair come from? That's my concern with you know, with saying, okay, we're going to reduce we can't really afford to fix everything we need to now, but we're going to take in less revenue. I just think structurally it's
I've got a real quick question. You said over the past 5 years we put away 7.6 million-ish?
roughly, yep.
What of that do we currently have on hand?
It's all in reserve, it's all in fund balance.
Okay, what haven't we done if we've got that much in reserve right now, to me, over the next 5 years, it would seem that we're going to pull in probably, if we just use the same number, 7.6 mil, now we've got 15-ish million for the $11 million worth of projects.
Our expenses in operating the system have increased. Last year, for example, we went from FY23 was 1.458 million. Last year was 915,000. So we did see a drop last year. We're seeing increased costs in chemicals. We know that our electricity contract expires in December, and we anticipate paying a higher rate for electricity, and the wastewater treatment plant is a huge consumer of electricity. Not to mention, even if we do receive the grant funding to address the PFAS and PFOA filtration that we need on a couple of our wells, there's going to be an increased expense with changing that filter media out probably every year to 18 months. It's been, and I attended the presentation just last week in Hampstead, where they're a bit ahead of us because they were hit harder, and MDE kind of came down on them when their numbers came in for PFAS. So they're farther along than most municipalities are, but they're anticipating, they've in testing realized that the PFOA substances break through the carbon filtration more quickly than the PFAS does. So those filters will need to be changed probably annually to 18 months. And they're looking at, you know, 6 figures plus to change out the carbon every year to 18 months. So that's a factor that we need to be aware of also, is that that's going to be an additional cost. Even if the filtration is paid for by a grant, it's still going to cost more to operate it. So we don't know exactly what that's going to be yet. That's
I think,
And that's
I was
what
gonna
we-
say,
But we still come in, we're still coming in like 4 million to the positive by the time it's all said
so
and done.
I don't think the 7.5 million is like an excess, right? Like, or profit or whatever. I think that's just revenues, right? Like you're
That's-
not,
No,
are you
that's-
saying you're
that is-
adding
that
7
is the
million to the
surplus.
pot?
That is the
Surplus.
That is the
Okay,
surplus,
got it,
yes.
got it.
That's in the account.
And
that's the money we have to tackle these capital projects.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, as we get to the filtration and everything like that, you know, that's why, you know, there's a resolution in here, for instance, that brings us back to a yearly water workshop, because that's where you guys would make that case of, obviously this is going up, these expenses are going up. But, you know, right now, I just don't see, I don't see the justification for not doing 5%. And that's kind of I mean, that's my problem at least. I get that, we have the additional expenses, but again, to Harry's point, project it out over the 5, I mean, numbers are adding up in that regard. But like you said, there is other projects coming up, like the filtration for the PFAS, PFOA, but we don't have that yet. When we have those estimates, bring it up to the water workshop that we have for the year, and let's address it then. But there's no, again, this is just from the mayor's office. I don't believe there's no reason we can't give reprieve in the current moment.
We'll share the capital improvement program. We'll have it updated in time for next week's meeting and share that. So if there's any, that'll provide a lot of the more detailed numbers. And certainly we can, pass on the utility surpluses for the last 5 years, so everybody has the numbers.
And
that I'm
one
looking
other
at.
thing, Jim, is that, that the positive amounts that have gone to the fund balance in the last 5 years have been due to the benefit assessments from all of the new housing that's been built over in Meadowbrook and Meads Crossing, because our total, ratepayer intake is only about $3 million. So an average of $1.5 million a year as being put into the fund didn't come out of those ratepayers. It came from the benefit assessments. And perhaps the thing to do going forward is to relook at what that benefit assessment is for new developments. Maybe we can cut a little slack to the residents, but then look at how to fund that future going forward through the benefit assessment as opposed to doing it through the ratepayer.
And again, that'd make sure the ratepayer isn't subsidizing housing to begin with.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what it really comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, they're clearly not, because the funds don't get to that, the amount that's paid by ratepayers doesn't get anywhere near that amount, so. But it's just, so think about that going forward.
We'll get some detailed figures for you for consideration. So I just wanted to put it on your radar screen tonight. So not really expecting, and of course we have to have a public hearing on the budget and everything like that next month. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of the concern and the longer term outlook.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, additional comments, questions, concerns by council? If not, I guess I'm going to a vote. Do we have additional comments, questions, concerns?
Sure.
Going to a vote on introducing the ordinance 06-2025 fiscal year 2025-2026 operating budget. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Carries. Up next, ordinance 07-2025 fiscal year 2025-2026 water and sewer rates.
Motion to introduce?
Yep, that's what I'm going to be looking for. Motion to introduce. Looking for and Jim, does this have the 5% on the reduction?
That does not. We did that ordinance before Thursday when you advised us which utility budget to use. So we'll adjust that for.
Just for the 5%, because that's what we have budgeted currently. Other than that, we got a motion for introduce. Looking for a second.
Second.
Additional comments, questions, concerns by council? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Carries. Up next, we have the 2025-2026 tax rate. We're going to be asking this for emergency adoption. There's always the option of not of introducing and then adopting at the May 21st meeting. However, this will allow us to get that tax rate over to the county. That tax rate, as far as I'm aware, nothing has changed
Correct.
from the previous year. So, looking for a motion of introduction on that.
Motion to introduce.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns by council?
Do we have to?
Yeah, do we introduce it first and then emergency, right? Jim?
We can do it.
We
a
can do
step
it
at a
either way
time.
if I remember correctly.
Certainly.
My question is, do we need to,
You'll need to vote to declare it an emergency to pass it tonight.
That'll be what
and
passes
also,
today.
the constant yield, do we have to announce that?
No.
Okay.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns by council? Hearing none, proceeding forward. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. No. Carries. Okay. Next up, I'll be looking for a motion to adopt it as an emergency.
This is just, the reason for the emergency is just to get it over to the county.
Yep, because they have a expedited like filing. Again, we can wait till the 21st if real need be, but this just helps us be in compliance faster, essentially. And again, nothing has changed, so.
Well, I mean, the 31st wouldn't be 30, or the 21st rather wouldn't be 30 days anyway, so.
We only have to wait 6 days.
Oh, is it
On
six? I thought I,
ordinance, it's 6 days.
okay, I thought it was
We
3.
usually go with 7.
No, we normally wait till the next meeting,
Next
but
meeting, okay.
technically you only need to wait 6 days on ordinance.
That's why I'm,
Good. Looking for a motion to adopt it as emergency.
so moved.
Looking for a second.
I'll second.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns by council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Carries. Up next, we have, up for introduction, ordinance 09-2025, police manual.
You guys voted to declare it
Voted to
an
declare the
emergency.
Yes.
We didn't vote to
So
actually
now we
pass
need
it
to
under
vote to
emergency.
approve it.
Oh, to approve
did
it
we
after,
not?
it's-
No,
oh, we voted for
Oh,
introduction, we
declare
voted
an
for
emergency,
emergency.
now we have to-
Now we need to vote
Never
to
mind,
approve.
never
Go to the
mind.
thing
Okay,
for
I
6
remember
days
now.
and- Yeah.
Okay, looking for a
I think
motion
they did
to
it backwards.
approve the ordinance
When did they
08-2025
Thank
fiscal
you.
year 2025-2026 tax rate for emergency adoption. Looking for a motion of approval.
Move to approve.
Looking for a second.
Second.
I don't know which one of you guys. One of you guys did though.
Well, we did it. It's a, thing's done.
I've got Chris and Harry.
All those are additional comments, questions, concerns by council? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay.
Thank you.
Carries. We got that off the plate. Up next, we have ordinance 09-2025 police manual. Basically, what this ordinance is doing is allowing the police chief to adopt the police manual, make changes to it. We use a system called Lexipol, which essentially keeps it up to date to begin with. And it is, also makes it available for viewing by the mayor, city manager, or council, or, why are my ordinances out of whack here? Thank you. Again, we have Lexipol here. That's a subscription that we subscribe to. It basically keeps our police manual up to date. This ordinance is giving the police chief the ability to adopt the police manual. If anybody's familiar with the police manual, it's been on the back burner of council's radar for probably, a couple of years now since the last adoption, and we just have policy basically
Probably a
tackling
good year since it, or close to a year since it's been done.
So I am looking for a motion in regards to this.
Motion to introduce.
For a second,
Second.
additional comments, questions, concerns by council? Hearing none.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure why, but the language strikes me a little bit, I'm not,
Part of the language?
well, just the sole authority, the chief has sole authority, and I'm wondering if that's, we just remove the word sole and just the chief of police shall have the authority to adopt.
That's fine. I'm good with removing sole.
Yeah, that doesn't,
Yeah, that just,
Yeah, that's fine.
when you get singular like that, we need to move this off the square.
Is everybody consensus on that? We'll go ahead and get the sole removed from that. Sounds good. Was that your only concern on it?
Yeah, that was really the concern.
Roger that. Additional comments, questions, concerns by council? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Carries. A lot of stuff. Okay, up next, we have ordinance 10-2025, city attorney requirements. Basically, this is changing it to where the city attorney may be requested instead of required to attend all meetings by the mayor, city manager, or city council. In addition to this, it is making to where our contracts, agreements, ordinances, bonds, leases, and other legal documents can be specifically requested to be reviewed by the mayor, city manager, or city council. However, that doesn't automatically apply. That it goes over to special meetings as well. It's basically just saying, instead of this is a shall that the city attorney has to do all this, this is more of a request. If the city council wants him, let's say we get to the workshop, right, and you guys, well, we want to see him at the Monday meeting so he can make sure that everything's legally good. The city councilor can request that instead of him being obligated to sit here through a meeting and us pay him essentially for doing that. The next thing would be, again, those contracts, the agreements and stuff like that. There's stuff that we do here that we're essentially just handing over a bill for what is essentially a signature. And that's my take on it. I'm looking for a motion in regards to it.
Motion to introduce.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Additional comments, questions, concerns by council?
The main concern that I have is that, in regards to the city attorney attending the meetings of the planning commission, that the planning commission should have a voice into whether or not they request the city attorney to be present.
I would
It's their meeting.
I'd give that over to the city manager still, as kind of the director of operations here. I mean, if there's undoubtedly times where the planning and zoning commission doesn't necessarily need an attorney there, I'd say. I mean, I've looked through a couple of them where they don't. But I'll defer to Jim. I mean, I'm fine either way.
I think that, certainly
he
the
can
city
also
manager,
blanket
can take that under advisement if the planning commission, is uncomfortable about a particular item or a process or something like that. I think the city manager, whoever's sitting at the seat years from now or whatever, would certainly, it gives them the discretion to direct the city attorney to attend, so.
That's, again,
They have a mechanism, right? Like
They do.
there's gonna be a council liaison, right? Like they can talk to the council liaison and be like, hey, I want this thing, or they can even email you and say, hey, I'm not comfortable legally with whatever the thing is, and say their piece. Like, it's not like they don't have a mechanism for having the attorney there, right?
and that's what I think this still gives everybody, that mechanism.
I mean, they receive their packets ahead of time, so they review them. They have any questions if they need for the attorney, then they could go to Jim or the liaison and request that the attorney attend. I don't think it's like jumping through hoops or anything. So. Plenty of people to reach out to be able to have the attorney
I'm
attend.
fine. That's, I'm just bringing that up. I don't think, like you say, I don't think that that's a huge issue one way or the other. The other question that I have is, and this goes back to all of the discussions from, a year and a half ago and even before then, and this applies not only to the city attorney, but also to several other the officer positions. We don't have anything in here regarding removal.
We do, or it's in a different one. It's in a different one of these ordinances that are on the board for tonight. It classifies them as agents of the city and agencies of the city.
Well, I read that, and I'm not real, I did not have a chance to really review that one in depth, and I'm not real keen on the wording in that. I need to look into that further and match that up with current code.
I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to not say an officer of the city acting on behalf of the city isn't an agent of the city. I mean, that's basically where the correlation comes down the line of it all. Realistically, I still stand by the commitment that the mayor had the authority to fire the city attorney. And this is basically just re-clarifying that, because again, if anybody's gonna sit here and make the argument that an officer of the city who is representing the city isn't an agent of the city in representation matters, in my opinion, that's a far stretch. And the mayor does still have discretion over agents and agencies of the city. And again, this is in a different ordinance, but that basically just goes into clarifying what that means, that officers listed within yada, yada, yada. But we'll get to that when
We
get to
discuss
it.
that when we get to that ordinance, though?
Yeah,
Right,
that's fine.
That's
I-
holding up this one, so like,
Yeah.
I'd like to get this one done and move forward, please.
Additional questions, comments, concerns by council?
No, sir.
And again, this is for introduction.
Yep, for introduction. Without hearing any additional comments, questions, concerns, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay? No. It carries forward. Next up, we have ordinance 11-2025, executive administrative assistant. This is something that has been talked about at the city for a good while now. Basically, this is creating a second who is also a jack of all trades. You know, should we lose an economic development director? Should we lose a planning and zoning director, anything like that? We have somebody who can fill those spots to where all that responsibility isn't put on our city manager. And I know, you know, Jim being the working guy that he is, he'll tell you he can handle it all. But and this is no offense to Jim, but it is a lot of workload for one individual. There has to be a succession plan for here in the city if something should happen. And this is basically a role that could fill that to where they could temporarily fill the role while we find an actual temporary or permanent nomination for the position. But again, it's somebody who's going to coordinate tasks that don't necessarily need to be held up by our city manager on the day-to-day. Because there is many tasks out there that Jim does take on that he shouldn't, not to say shouldn't be taken on, but it can be delegated to somebody in a position like this. One thing I've talked about with the city managers, and when we do go to place this position out, should it be approved, one of the key requirements we're going to be looking for is grant writing process, because we also wanted to kind of fill that initial role that we're missing here at the city. So, without further talking on it, I'm looking for a motion in regards to it.
Motion introduce?
Looking for a second.
Second.
Additional comments, questions, concerns by council?
My only question on this is about the chief of police being included in this, and
I forgot to mention that. That's my bad. So there is a revised version that we have where the chief of police has been taken out. So that is, again, that is my bad because we didn't get it in the packets in time. But there's a couple of these where we had additional corrections. They just didn't make it to the packets. So Jim, if you can, remind me when we get to them, just so we mention them before we
well,
get to
so we're only voting on introduction at this point.
Yeah,
so
just introduction. Yeah,
correct.
and that's where we're going to make the corrections between introduction and
right.
approval. Sorry, that was my bad on that one.
Thank you.
Additional comments, questions, concerns by council? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Carries. Next up, we have the amendment to the sign code, ordinance 12-2025, amendment to sign code. Basically, what this is allowing is for community-based signs. It has a few different requirements and seasons to make sure the signs are coming up and down. Again, it also has an approval process and then a max amount that you're allowed. It also requires that if you're going to be placing them on city property, you need to get permission for the appropriate department of where you're placing them. Looking for a motion in regards to it.
Motion to introduce?
Second.
Second.
Comments, questions, concerns?
Still think there's a typo.
There is a typo.
It's still the 610.
Oh, the
10 is in.
My bad. We'll get that.
I think I.
Yeah, we
It's
know, again, there's some of the
supposed to be
stuff
10.
that we know about it, it just
Yeah.
will be corrected between
Got it.
the
Yep.
current and post. But it's meant to be 10 in the current edition,
What's
unless,
meant to be 10?
Yeah.
unless somebody wants to go
Alright.
down to 6. It's, is everybody good with 10, or does everybody want 6 in particular?
I'm fine with 10.
Again, this is mainly just to allow community-based organizations to have signs. Currently, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but nobody's supposed to have signs, right? Are sports organizations, are they allowed to have signs currently?
So the current code, which I know, Mayor, you and I have talked about, I have some concerns with our current code based on case law that's occurred since that was adopted. We call them community associations that are, organizations not for profit that are allowed to do off-premise advertising. That was really the driver behind it. Was generally the sign code restricts signage to the property where the activity is occurring and not on other properties. So this community association section was created to allow sports organizations, civic groups, things like that, to advertise the, whatever it might be, the signups for soccer, Little League, the pancake breakfast for the, or the carnival or something like that for the firemen. So there has been some case law since then that has put some ordinances like that to the test. So this is one that I think I would like to get a legal review on before we actually pass it.
And I 100% agree in that regard. I mean, regardless, everything introduced and approved right now has to have legal surety, but we do, again, it should be introduced and whatnot. Let's make sure we get it by Jay, just to make sure it's.
And I will
And so
comment
I
that
understand,
the size is pretty substantial compared to your average, like, lawn sign
Yeah.
that a lot of these are.
That's a real concern to me. I think that we need to have,
32 square feet, for example, is bigger than what we allow for commercial signs in the,
yeah, I mean, we shouldn't be, especially, you know, like in the downtown district where we do restrict the size of signs, it shouldn't be any larger than signs that are otherwise permitted in those districts.
What if we went to a dimension or a total of all the signs can't exceed whatever the dimension of 8 by
No,
4
that would open up to people doing
I
a
was
bunch
gonna
of
say,
little tiny signs and one giant one, you know?
although the counterpoint to that is, I know back in the day, we had, when we would put up, say, drama signs for the high school or something like that, it was a sheet of plywood and a sheet of plywood in an A. And so that would have been 8 by 4 at that point.
Right, but I think that while that would be okay, you know, like at the circle where everybody puts the, you know, political signs, the larger political signs, I don't think that would be appropriate in a neighborhood, and it certainly wouldn't be appropriate in the historic downtown district. So I think that we need to rein that in some manner so that it has to conform to sizes per other areas of the code.
I think it should be zoned, is kind of what you're saying, right?
So
Like-
in
like-
conformance
like
with
this
with-
area in this neighborhood should only be yay big, this area can be bigger, is
Well,
that
there's
what you're
certain,
getting at?
I think the current code allows for signs to be of a certain size in various zoning districts anyway, and that this ought to coordinate with that.
I'd say maximum size dimensions based on square footage of whatever 8 by 4 would be. Or I mean, even take it down to 6 by 2. But if someone wants to do one large sign compared to a bunch of little signs, but when they actually fill out the application for 10 signs up to the square footage dimensions of 6 by 2 or 8 by 4, that gives them that flexibility of what kind of sign they'd like. Again, in my opinion, one big sign covers what some people are looking for, a bunch of little signs cover what people are looking for, but if you regulate it down to the square footage dimension total of what that's what you're allowed to have between those 10 signs that you'd be regulated on that permit anyways, I think that confines people as to what those 10 signs can be. Even if we put them to, I don't know, whatever size would be reasonable for people, quite a bit of signs still regardless, but if you
The smaller the sign is, the harder it is to read too, right? So like
Exactly.
if I'm trying to get people to sign up for my soccer club,
And again, that's why I say, maybe you change it from maximum size, dimensions shall not exceed, the 8 by 4, instead change that to the square footage of 8 by 4. That allows those 10 signs that they're getting in the permit anyways to match up to that maximum. So if they want to do 10 little signs, they're free to. If they want to do one big sign on the side of a building, they're free to.
Yeah, because, I mean, that just equates to like a banner. It's not even really,
And that gives them the choice of how they want to advertise.
I'm sorry, I still think we need to match this up with the zoning, what's allowed within the zoning. Write in something about, your typical, like, real estate yard size sign. I don't know that that's legislated in. I'd have to go back and read the zoning regs. But I think that, the way this is written, somebody could put a 8 by 4 sign in their yard somewhere in Meadowbrook, and I can just imagine what would follow that.
Well, in theory, I don't know what the HOA's.
there's also a sunset provision in here too, right? So like they can only have it in for X amount of time and then it has to come down. So like if I'm, again, to use
And then
the
they get
soccer
a
club,
permit to put it back up again.
If it's
That's-
being abused, you revisit it.
yeah.
You know, why create the
I mean, I'm
possibility of
gonna
that
tell
kind of
you,
abuse? I'm just,
unless you make this ordinance 5 pages long, there's always gonna be a loophole that somebody can figure out to use to put a sign up.
that's still, that's not an excuse to,
It isn't,
Right.
but I'm just saying,
Poor
if
legislation.
if it is being abused, we have a permit process. Again, change the dimension to 8x4 in square footage required for the 10 signs. That gives them flexibility of one large sign or a bunch of smaller signs, or again, maybe drop it down to 6x2. But I think your problem is gonna be, no offense to the small yard signs, I don't honestly know how effective they are, to be truthful with you. Well, they've also been doing larger signs for many years. I know people who have been using larger signs here in Taneytown for many years that can't because we've done stricter enforcement on it. But this is, again, I think this is being overthought a little bit. Just make the maximum size dimension to the square footage of, again, maybe even 6x2. I think that really limits you and what you can do with your 10 signs. No matter what, you still get the 10 signs everybody else can do, but you have to do within the square footage dimensions of 6x2. Or again, 8x4. But if you're going to limit each sign to a little yard sign, I mean, you know, the next thing I do is I take a lot of those little yard
but
signs.
you're only, right, I mean, you're only limiting that in like the residential zones where you don't want to have a big sign put up.
I mean, I'd be fine with adding a specification that the 8x4 can't be, again, I still think the square footage is the easiest way to limit it, but that's just me.
In addition to the size questions, one of the primary tenets of the existing sign code, limits signs to the premise where the activity or business is occurring. I think that by defining community-based organization as a business physically located within the corporate limits of the city of Taneytown, that opens the door to any business advertising anywhere in the city.
Yeah,
And that, from the way the city has regulated signs in the past, that's a huge departure. And it doesn't seem that, the idea of the oversight of aesthetics and safety is really being met by kind of opening the floodgates on off-premise advertising. Now, again, it certainly is council's purview to open those floodgates, but it is a big departure from our current sign program. And I do just want to point out also, because this is a zoning ordinance, there's a little extra step involved here, so it needs to go before the planning commission for them to have the opportunity to comment before we have a public hearing on it. So a little extra step in there because it is a zoning ordinance.
Well, again, my suggestion, sign dimensions, bring it down to a square footage, and then kick it back to planning and zoning and see what they recommend. Maybe they have a better idea for it. And then keep the mind open.
My only objection to that is square footage is gonna be really hard to regulate. So that's where I would actually prefer dimensional callouts, because, like I said, otherwise you're gonna have whoever's doing the enforcement going around and doing math to figure out what the signs are and what they all add up to.
We
Well, I
should
think
be
that's
able
where
to
the
catch that at the application
Yeah, the
point.
application process in
So-
here is where you're gonna catch that.
I still think you're opening a can of worms to allow a sheet of plywood sized sign in a residential neighborhood. I think you're just asking for trouble. Asking for trouble.
I mean, there's always the idea of just kicking it back to planning and zoning and see what they say. Again, they might have a recommendation that makes it work better.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not opposed to, you know me, I'm not opposed to changing the sign ordinances because I think our sign ordinances are outdated. But let's be smart about this.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that this, I don't think that this particular ordinance is ready to move forward.
Jim, is it after introduction it goes to planning and zoning?
Yeah, I mean, it can certainly be introduced tonight, and it can be massaged, however it needs to be, over the course of the.
Well, so let's strike this
But you
from-
wouldn't be able to, you
Yes.
wouldn't be able to pass it on the
Yeah,
21st.
I mean, we're not gonna pass on the 21st. I mean, let's introduce,
But it
kick
can
back
still
to
be
planning and
introduced.
zoning, get comments, come back, comment again from planning and zoning's comment, and again, craft the legislation as needed. I still advocate fully that there needs to be some kind of ordinance there for this. And
Well,
again,
I don't
this is-
disagree. I'm not,
and
I'm
that's
not
what-
disagreeing with you on
and
the
that's what-
necessity.
I'm fine.
We're just hammering out the
And that's what,
details.
I'm fine however this changes. I think, let's kick it back to planning and zoning, see what they come back with, and then let's do additional input at our own workshop, essentially.
And then the other thing is about permits, fees. You're charging essentially a quarterly permit fee for signs for nonprofits. I think that's,
I actually brought up something similar when I read this, because like I was concerned that, like, depending if a lot of nonprofits are really small, right? So like they don't necessarily have
They don't have money,
resources.
right.
Exactly, like you're working with hundreds of dollars tops, and that's like for your whole freaking year. So like I even suggested like a potentially, like, depending on the size of your or your status as a C3 or whatever, having some kind of like a progressive fee structure too, because like I don't want small nonprofits to get priced out and not be able to do signs also.
And I'm cool with that as well. My only question would be, Jim, can we make sure we get legal on whether that is allowed? That's my only.
it may be we have to
That's-
charge everybody or
yeah.
charge nobody.
And that's
so-
my only issue is I think you might, from my understanding of it, it's either you charge everybody or you don't charge anybody. But regardless, let's get legal on that. Again, let's come back to this. I'd say introduce it so it can still be molded and moved. But it's not.
I
gonna
would
adopt
prefer
it
some
very
recrafting before we even introduce this. This one, to me, is a little bit too much work needs to be done, in my opinion.
Well, I think the introduction is just the intent to do this. Realistically, you can craft it,
Well,
mold it
then-
however you want after it.
Yeah, because, I mean, I would like to hear what planning and zoning has to say about it for sure, because they,
Right, and we could bring it up to planning and zoning without having to introduce the ordinance. We can, it can be brought up to planning and zoning right off the bat.
Jim, how many days do we have after introducing? Is it 45? It might be, it's 70 days, actually. It's 70 days after introduction. So you have 70 days after introduction
dies.
before it dies.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think in 70 days, there's no reason we can't get enough comment and stuff to mold this. I'm still in favor of introduction, but it's up to council.
I want to try and make sure some of our civic organizations have the ability to talk about, what they're doing. I mean,
And let's
on
put
the
it-
campaign, a lot of
I'd
people were
get some
asking, like,
input
what do we
from
have for
them.
the youth? And it's like, well, there's a lot of stuff through Parks and Rec. There's lots of things going on, but they can't advertise outside of like Facebook.
That'd be my next
right?
thing. Parks and Rec, get common opinion on that. Again, let's try to get common opinion from Parks and Rec, from Planning and Zoning. Come back to this, not at the May 21st, but at the June workshop. And then if we need, we'll make it a point of emphasis at the June workshop to make this a full-on discussion. Final out. Again, I'm still in favor of introduction because it shows the intent to do. Anything in here can be changed from introduction to the
Even if
past.
it dies, we can reintroduce, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I think,
if we still need to do more work, but like, I don't know, I want to make sure that this stays on radar, because like, I think it's important for our civics to
Yeah.
at least see the appearance that we're doing something, right? Like we're trying to help you guys out in ways that we can that make sense.
Additional comments, questions, concerns by council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Carries.
Fair.
Up next, we have establishment of information technology officer and agency designation for officers. So this is the one that we were talking about earlier that has the agency designation at the end of it. This is basically just adding it to that section, so basically anybody who's appointed officer, which is basically everybody listed in that section, does have somebody who is the removal authority, which, again, my argument would be if you are somebody representing the city, if you're an officer of the city, you are by correlation a agent of the city and thus an agency of the city as well. The main purpose of this article, though, is basically establishing the IT department as a supplemental office. There's been some back and forth of what IT is here in Taneytown. It is my belief from the mayor's office that IT is a supplemental department. This still allows for the creation of the IT manual. However, it does give the department heads more tailoring of their specific IT policies. And I think that goes to include social media policy as well. And again, it says, each policy shall be managed operationally by the applicable department head or executive with guidance and technical input from the IT office. So they still have guidance and input, but this is still allowing those department heads to really steer their departments. And again, it is making the head of IT an officer of the city, which is something that should have happened a long time ago if they are serving as a department head capacity or leading a
Yeah, but
department.
this doesn't make this wouldn't make, it doesn't create an IT department, it creates it
No.
as an agency.
It creates,
So
it creates IT staff, and what I would say is what it creates is the head of that agency, which is our IT. It creates a head of that agency. I don't know if IT needs to be a department. I don't know if IT really is a department type role, especially in a city as small as ours. I believe they serve more in an officer capacity with the ability to have additional employees to serve that agency, to serve that goal, to serve that mission. But
The idea of a department would be a little bit more consistent with how other functional areas are set up in the city. So I'll use the finance department as an example, that, they support all departments. So they interact with every other department, and in a way, a lot of ways IT is similar, that, it touches all departments, just like paying the bills does. This is another one that I would think the interpretation of agency, I'm not really clear about.
Yeah, that's where I'm kind of foggy, is about agency and interpretation of agency. And if that's defined clearly in code and charter. And I
well,
would
it
have-
isn't.
this
That's
would-
why. That's
this
why.
would
That's why
define
it's
it, so-
clarifying what it is.
Okay, yeah, so
So
I,
this is basically the definition of what agency is, because currently it does specify agents and agency of the city under the mayor's purview for appointees and whatnot. But again, just using what I would consider common sense, if you are a representative and you're an officer of the city and you are representing the city, are you not then by definition an agent of the city? Are you an agent of the city of Taneytown when you go to represent them in a legal case?
And I certainly think that some definitions are in order, because we use we throw around the term agent in correspondence, in agreements, that, we may say the city or its agent. And in that, case, we may be referring to a contractor, or, a surveyor, or whomever we've engaged to do a job for the city. We may refer to them as our agent, that, our agent has the right to go on the property in this easement or whatever, what have you.
Well, for us,
And
I
yet
mean-
we don't define it. So I think there definitely needs to be some clarification to it.
In my mind, there's no doubt that agent is referring to the officers of the city. I mean, it would be like, when you're talking about legal, our legal is an agent of the city.
And, right, that's just contrary to,
I know.
previous opinions from attorneys.
I know.
So,
yeah, and, like you say, it may be clear in your mind, but that doesn't make it clear in legal language.
Well, in legal language, it actually says for agent and agencies, a representative of the city.
And, there are enough inconsistencies in code and charter already. I don't want to be introducing another one, so I'd like to see this studied more again before we move this forward.
I'm gonna ask for a motion in regards to introduction.
Motion to introduce.
Looking for a second?
Second.
Looking for additional comments, questions, concerns by council. And Jim, refer to Jay as far as the definition of agent and agency, but when I went through the legal definition of it, if I'm recalling correctly, it was a representative of the city, which any officer is going to be a representative of the city. Unless someone has a different
But then you need
opinion of
to
what officer is.
have a clear definition of who the officers are.
Well, that's why that whole chapter is officers and employees, and then it also says, it does
I
define.
need, you're right, I'd like to read this in context with the greater ordinance before I say any more about it, because right now, it's too far out of context for me to be able to really grasp it.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns by council? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Carries. Up next, we have temporary administrative suspension. Basically, this is going over the ability of the administration and the mayor to basically suspend the enforcement of an ordinance for up to 60 days. When it is suspended, it automatically goes on to the council's agenda, and then also requires a written notice to the city manager and city council of why the ordinance was suspended. In addition to that, it also a proposed correction or clarifying of what might make this more enforceable. The issue with this is we have a bunch of ordinances here in the city of Taneytown that realistically we don't have the enforceability for. This would allow it to kick it back to the legislators, put it on their agenda automatically, and again, not have city staff questioning how do we enforce an ordinance that is not enforceable. So this is basically a mechanism to kick things back to the legislative from the administrative. And I'm looking for a motion in regards to that.
I'll do motion to introduce.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Additional comments, questions, concerns by council?
This is a bad idea. This is just a bad idea.
Why?
Why?
You have, this ordinance gives the mayor power to do anything he wants, suspend whatever he wants, do anything he wants, and without any kind of check or balance. This is bad.
The check is
The check
council.
is council.
Yeah, the check.
Yeah, but the check is council, but then, the council isn't going to meet,
Not only that, it has an automatic sunset on it of 60 days, and then it can't be
60 days, how much can you do in 60 days?
from an ordinance though.
This is bad. This is a bad idea.
Authority is in charter. There shouldn't be any authority in ordinance. Basically, this is just allowing to kick back ordinances that are
No, this is bad.
impractical.
Bad and questionable in terms of legal sufficiency.
I don't understand the questionability of it, just because
Yeah, can you help me understand, Chris?
automatically has the check and balance built into it.
You have really, you guys have a really strong opinion about this, I don't understand.
Well, technically enforcement falls to the administration, actually. And the.
Council to do that.
No, council is not the enforcers of code. It is
They
actually,
establish the ordinances,
yes, and that's the,
and management is to carry them out.
but
Mayor
there's
doesn't have
there's
any input in
ordinances,
that
If they're having
whatsoever.
trouble doing that and something's not enforceable in some way, or there's questions about it, like it's on us to clarify it or to fix it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's my reading of the intent of this, is to, like,
I mean-
there's stupid stuff in code and charter that's not being, like, it's unclear or it's poorly written, whatever the case may be, like, our job is to try and fix it.
And I've said that for 2 years, that there's a lot of junk in our code and charter that needs to
Yeah,
come
we
out.
talked about it.
But
yeah.
I'm not,
and technically, you guys could call an emergency meeting if it was something substantial and literally do away with the repeal right then and there. Council has the authority to do away with it even through this. The only thing this does is basically suspend enforcement on the administrative level, which I can already do from the mayor's seat if you understand enforcement and administrative policy.
then why do you need
But
this ordinance?
what this does is it kicks it back to the council saying this needs to be clarified, so I'm not just saying to the city manager, hey, we're just not gonna enforce this.
But
This is too much of a carte blanche. No.
To me, this is just,
To make that good.
to me, this is a safety check, right? Like, something's wrong, it needs to be fixed, it goes on our radar immediately. We have 2-3 months to fix it, like that. Otherwise, things just keep getting kicked down keeps getting kicked down the road. And like you just said, like, you've been talking about things that are silly for 2 years and it never gets done, right?
And
Like,
that's why we have
this is
a-
how we can get
Then
things
that's
done.
why we have-
I'm
and that's why we have
much
this
more
right here.
interested in having council do their job in terms
That's
of
what
doing
this-
that.
that's what this
But
does.
But that's not what this does. Well, it is what this does in the end of it, but it puts, you could suspend habeas corpus with this. I mean, no, this is bad.
I don't
This is-
think
This
habeas
is too
corpus is
general,
in code
it
and
is too
charter.
broad, this is not a good idea.
It's improper in every way.
Can you help me understand?
Yeah, I'm
Like,
trying to
what-
understand it as
Nothing
well.
good about it.
Because it puts,
That's not an
it
answer, though.
centralizes the power in the mayor. You could, with this ordinance, he could suspend the entire code of the city of Taneytown. on a whim.
And then you'd have to fix it within 60 days or the next council meeting, which you could call the next
Well,
day.
what could,
You
no,
can,
this is, no.
this
no.
is basically just trying to put things on the legislative radar to get fixed that we cannot reasonably enforce. Again, if something's unreasonable to enforce, nah, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna instruct staff not to enforce it to begin with.
Allows the city, the mayor to create the city government in his image and likeness.
No, because it,
It doesn't do
Just
that.
like God.
No, it doesn't do that.
So
It
how-
does on a temporary
so how should it
basis.
be
It doesn't do it on a permanent basis, correct?
But as council, you have the ability to call an emergency meeting the next day if you're not happy with it. Like, that's what, you don't understand the powers that the council actually has and the checks and balance system that it has against the mayor.
and all authority is vested through the charter. There's no authority that I can take through the suspension of an ordinance. All the suspension of the ordinances is basically saying, hey, let's say, for instance, signs. Obviously, we're having a tough time enforcing signs here. Nothing about it makes sense. People, if we went by the strict code, you wouldn't be able to have any signs up and down the streets of Taneytown. You wouldn't be able to have political
Well,
signs.
that's not correct.
That is correct. Jim, is it correct, per the strict definition of our code currently, that you would not be able to have political signs anywhere on the streets, even if it was a yard sign?
I think you would not be able to have them in any residential district.
Residential district. Still in
That
favor.
would be, that if I were asked to enforce the sign code for political signs, I think the biggest thing would be the ones that are, the sign code does not permit signs in any of the R districts. So R6, 7500, 10, or 20. It does not speak to that. There is a section in the sign code that describes signs permitted in all districts, and political signs or campaign signs are not included in that section. So I would interpret that to say, if it's not permitted in all zones, and it's not listed in a specific zone, I can't approve it.
And again,
Would you guys be more comfortable if you take out the language of suspend enforcement of? Like, is that your main objection? Like, what is the main objection? that I'm trying to understand?
I'm not averse to trying to fix things, but just the way this is written is just entirely too broad. I think we need to, I think we
Again,
really need to.
I think we need a mechanism to put stuff on our radar that doesn't make sense for these guys to.
Okay, but
to
that
be
doesn't
doing.
have to, that mechanism doesn't have to be, oh, the mayor's,
well, we,
Right,
as
that's what I'm saying, do we, like.
Here's the
like,
issue, as
would getting rid of the suspension of whatever.
the suspend enforcement, again, that technically,
Thank you.
that technically doesn't do anything, because as administration, we can already say we can't enforce that, we're not going to enforce it. This is basically just a mechanism that kicks it back to council radar. And again, worst case, something gets suspended, you call an emergency meeting the next day, and this is just to explain how you could use the powers of council to basically overcome anything in here. You call a meeting the next day, you basically say, we affirm that this resolution, that this ordinance is doing what it's supposed to do, and it goes back into full effect, and the mayor can't suspend it again for a year anyways. So it isn't, you could literally the next day put it back into effect if you're utilizing the authority of council correctly. And that's what it comes down to, is all this does is kick it onto the agenda automatically. It gives a written statement by the mayor to the city manager and council of why this is being suspended. And then, not only that, basically, we have to also propose corrections of what might make it enforceable on the administration aspect. And again, as you as a legislators, it comes down to, if you guys think it's good, reaffirm it. If you think it needs to be amended, clarified, or revised, do that. If you think it is no longer necessary, unlawful, because I'm going to tell you that we have ordinances that technically probably aren't lawful currently, repeal it. I mean, at the end of the day, all the power of the legislator still rests with the legislator. The only thing that's happening here is basically putting it on your radar with a written notice, and it has a sunset period if you guys decide not to do anything. But you could realistically, with 3 council members,
Period in a stick too, right? Like if nothing happens and you
yeah,
can't.
it
you can't do
sunsets it and then
anything
can't do
with
it for a year.
Yeah.
And again, I'd be fine with lowering that to,
Stick.
I'd be fine with lowering that to 30 days. The only reason it's 60 days is to allow a time frame for council to discuss the ordinance if they need to. Again, they can emergency adopt or fix to it if they want. But realistically, that 60 days is just to give more leeway for the legislator to actually do it. Because again, you could call a meeting of 3 council members the next day and repeal the enforcement by just saying, enforce it by what that code says. And again, more than likely, we're still just gonna say, well, if you haven't fixed it, explain how you want us to enforce it. Explain what the legislative intent of this ordinance is. Because that is the problem, is that some of this stuff doesn't make sense to try to enforce. And there is no overreach of executive authority here, because at the end of the day, the administration still has the ability for the actual enforcement of the ordinance and what that looks like. All this does is put it on council review, and it basically says, hey, you guys got to do something about this. And if you don't, I mean, there's really nothing else we can do. That's what it comes down to, because again, it can't be brought up for a year. Again, it can't be suspended for a year. You have a 60-day window, but again, you can call the meeting the next day, and it goes on to the next available council agenda for review. So even if we suspend it the day before a council agenda, it'll be on a day before the council meeting, it'll be on that agenda. The whole point of this is for us to start clarifying things that we believe we cannot enforce practically. I mean, I don't think this does anything.
I mean, what keeps you from putting together a list of those things right now? You know, you've got a resolution coming up.
I mean, that's essentially what a lot of this stuff is, right? Is that we are clearing through a backlog of stuff we already have. This just allows us to basically start kicking it back faster.
I just don't think that this is a,
Would maybe a more amenable solution be, instead of like let's say Chris sees something and he wants to suspend it, instead of giving him the power to suspend it immediately, why doesn't he maybe make the language something like the intent to suspend pending, you know, it coming before us at a council body, right? Like something. I mean,
My only thing would be just be aware that basically this is actually adding extra provisions to something we can already do. This is giving you guys written notice of when we're not enforcing something, essentially.
and I'm not opposed to that. You know, I mean, this goes all the way back to the chicken ordinance, right? You know, because we were not enforcing an ordinance that was already in place. And, you know, so we had to go through the long and torturous effort of fixing it. But,
In my opinion, this is more of a clear-cut way of it being done.
but I just don't think that this is the right solution to that problem. I think, you know, this could be crafted in a different way.
But
I mean-
without giving council the official notification that, hey, we're having problems with this, how do these get fixed?
But, I mean, that can be, but you can give that notice now anyways. There's nothing that stops that. There's nothing that stops the mayor from from saying, hey, look, we can't really enforce this ordinance, let's talk about it. Rather than giving a blanket power to suspend any ordinance that he wants, you know, let's just go back to doing things, you know, if you have an issue, you bring it to council. If you need council to work on it right away, then you call an emergency meeting. But I don't think that this ordinance is the way to solve that problem. And you know, while your intent is noble, the next guy's may not be.
The problem is that
And that's where the issue falls to me. It isn't just.
Yeah, but
you know,
there's
in
nothing.
the contemporaneous. You can't be making legislation for today, for the people who are in office today. You have to look at this legislation and how it would affect somebody 10 years from now.
The problem is that this is actually a safeguard for if someone like that came along.
I get it.
Because you have to, it basically clarifies the actual process for doing it, because again, right now, you could just not. This is actually given a written explanation, ways in which it can be fixed to the legislators. And again, it's up to them whether they want to fix it or at least clarify how we're supposed to enforce it. This is nothing more than what can already be done. The only thing is that it's actually clarifying the process for doing it. And not only that, it's actually giving a more clear picture of council of why it's being done, what is being suspended. I mean, it has sunset, it has, you guys could literally call a meeting the next day with 3 council members. There's no, I think it's fine as is. I haven't really heard a suggestion to improve it that would actually change from the substance of it. But Are we good to close discussion? Either way, we still have
Well,
introduction.
you would have to, like, this holds council accountable too. Like, it puts it on our agenda, so we're made aware of it, and we're not just sitting around pushing it down the road longer and longer. Like, it's made aware to the public, and it's on the agenda, and, like, we're there to fix it.
And this, I mean, what this really does is, it helps actually keep both accountable, because it gives you the written explanation to council, and allows council to come back and say, well, we believe it's written correctly, this is how you should be enforcing it. So it's giving you guys the chance to explain it, and it's actually a check on both branches, because it holds both of them accountable. If there's stuff that we can't enforce, and we know we can't enforce, and we're not enforcing it, then we need to be shooting it up regardless. If we're shooting stuff up that needs to be changed, revised, or at least told how we should enforce it, then it should be on your guys' agenda. In my opinion, this, like you were saying, this adds the ability for future mayors, future people in the position to keep not only the legislators going, but to also keep the people who have to enforce this stuff going. Because we can just sit all day and say, well, you know, this ordinance doesn't make sense, we're just not enforcing it. But this actually requires us to give you written notice, a suspension of it, and again, it has timeframes for all of that. But, I mean,
I'd like to study this a little bit more. I'm not opposed to what you're trying to do. I just don't think that this is the right vehicle.
I mean, introduction gives you time to study it. I mean, introduction, again, is not saying it's just saying the intent. And I think the intent here is for a mechanism for the administration to shoot stuff back up to the legislative that doesn't make sense on the administrative level. Because I am not gonna sit here and tell staff to enforce stuff that doesn't make sense. That said, is there any additional comments, questions, concerns by council? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Carries. Up next, we have police protection standards. On the police protection standards, basically what this is doing is reclassifying police officers in the adequate facility ordinance to mean patrol equivalent officers. It's setting a minimum of staffing to 16 patrol equivalent officers, and it is giving the chief of police the ability to say something he already has in here, which is to say, if we haven't met that 16 and there's a development coming through and they still believe they can provide adequate police protection, it's giving him the ability to still sign off on that.
We already have an adequate public facilities ordinance that addresses this.
Currently, it just says police officer, which also includes our administration. The idea is to take administration out of the account.
Seems redundant.
Well, this is clarifying, because I don't think the adequate facilities ordinance means administrative officers. I think it means boots on the ground patrol officers. I mean, why else would you tie it to population? I think this is basically just clarifying what I'd consider an error in code and giving the ability of a minimum staffing to what we consider police protection in Taneytown, with the ability of the police chief to sign off of, hey, I still believe we can provide adequate protection if a development is coming through that doesn't add to that additional load of the 16 officers that we have. I'm looking for a motion in regards to that.
Motion to introduce.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Additional comments, questions, concerns by council?
Well, I just don't like I don't like the minimum staffing level number in there. You have the ratio defined further up, and I think that's fine. I don't like the idea of
Plus,
putting it's
Well, to
of an
specify,
explicit number in there. I don't think that's,
since we're over 8,000, you technically need 17 patrol officers, and we're nowhere close to that.
right.
This sets a basically minimum of we consider police protection in Taneytown currently. Yeah, you could go back and change it in the future, but I think 16 is basically what we need to cover the shifts here in Taneytown and make sure that our streets are being protected.
And I don't disagree, but you state that further up. I just think that that whole
Well-
paragraph D is just
That
unnecessary.
1,000 is increasing that even further. Again, you'd be looking at 17 patrol.
right. But right. But what I'm saying is that that's already up
Yeah.
there. This paragraph D is just
This is saying the department has to get up to 16 to be considered minimally staffed to provide police protection.
I just think it's unnecessary and redundant.
you help me understand? What about it is redundant?
Well, because you've already established the level, minimum level, 3 paragraphs up. So, or 4, whatever it is, but, you've already established, a minimum level, so why do you need to
Talking about the
have
2
it?
officers per every 1,000?
Yes.
If you,
That's just add an additional officer slot essentially. While you
Right,
are,
so you've already defined it there. The paragraph D just I just don't understand what it is doing in there because it's unnecessary.
these basically setting the threshold for what is considered the adequate minimum police protection. It means we have to get our staffing up to 16 patrol officers. The other one is basically saying 1,000 for, or 2 for every
And
1,000.
what's the time frame for
I,
that? Because if we're not there now, then we're already in violation of an ordinance you're preparing, proposing to enact.
And that's basically what it's saying is we have to start getting
Over what
officers.
time frame? Right? I mean, the officers don't drop out of the sky.
I mean, again, if you're going by just the strict 2 for 1,000, even if you reclassified patrol equivalent officers, as we have here, you're still under that cap because the cap is now 17.
if in paragraph D, it said, "City of Taneytown shall maintain a minimum staffing level as defined in paragraph A, which shall serve as a baseline," and because it still gives the police chief discretion as needed.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Just to make it not be clashing. I think if we made that as defined in paragraph A, it would cover everything and we'd be good to go.
Fine with that. I mean, all it does is raise that minimum.
I know, but it also, I mean, it still keeps the paragraph in there so that the police chief has the discretion.
That's fine.
So if I understand what you just said, is that the staffing level in paragraph A can be superseded just by the by the chief or his designee with a certification that adequate coverage exists.
Yep, that basically
And
say,
then there's the line about for the proposed development, where did that come from? Because that really, it's like you're tying this to zoning code, just not,
well, that's what the adequate facilities,
right, and which we already have.
but that's what so that's what we're doing. This is the adequate facilities for police. The thing here we're changing is patrol equivalent police officers. Right now it just says police officers, which includes administration.
Well, why don't we just simply change that in the existing
Well,
code?
you still have the proposed development. The bold is the,
So proposed development is already in the code?
Yes.
Okay.
that's what the
I-
adequate
I-
facilities.
The bold's the changes.
All right, then I'm not really,
That basically all it does is, the chief has the authority to basically say, hey, this proposed development, it's not adding to our already population that we are already behind on officers. We still meet the adequate facilities for police protection. It still allows development to happen if it makes sense for the
yeah,
population.
and again, I
And
have
it
not,
strips the ability, the counting of administrative staff, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole purpose of this.
That's-
Like, we're
that's
trying to
the
get
purpose
to
of
make
it.
sure that
and I
boots are on the
understand that
ground
purpose.
and
I
do
have
stuff.
again, I don't have any issue with the purpose. And I wasn't reading it in context with the Adequate Facilities Act, you know what I mean? Because it's just presented here without the rest of without the context of the rest of the act. So, that's why, hence my confusion. All right. I'm certainly not against having enough police officers. That's not the question. Just want to make sure that reads correctly. And this may all be okay. It just, like I said, I didn't read it in that context, and so
The big
hit me
thing
wrong.
is the patrol equivalent officer.
Yeah, and that's and I'm good with that.
But making sure we still have a mechanism to override that 2 per 1,000, because I'm gonna tell you that now puts us at 17, and we're not near 17.
Yeah, well, I know,
patrol
right.
officers. So the idea is we still need a mechanism to get over that for development, like let's say a restaurant wanted to open up or something like
That's not, you know,
that.
that's based on housing, this is based on housing.
But even that, you still have to sign off on adequate facilities.
Do we have enough late-night officers to break up bar fights?
I mean,
Have a bar to break up fights at?
Oh, you right,
Okay, first things first. But yeah, I think if we change the thing in D,
as defined by paragraph
as
A.
defined by paragraph A, I think we're solid.
Yeah,
You hear
that's
that,
fine.
Jim?
It just, I just didn't see any need for that, for the specificity of that number in there. You know, because God forbid we lose,
That's something me.
population, and you're stuck to that,
Yeah,
you know
that's
what I mean?
something me and Jim talked about was a minimum, and I can't remember why. Oh, the minimum is for the future offset of maybe reducing the 2 officers per 1,000. But I know that's something we
thought that
talked.
was-
The
I
idea
thought
would
you
be
said that was regulated,
once
like-
there's adequate coverage for 24/7 coverage that will allow officers to take leave time or, you know, court duty or whatever, you know, takes them off the street, that we may not need to continue with 2 officers per 1,000 indefinitely. So once we have that critical mass for coverage of the city, we may be able to accommodate additional population without hiring, you know, the same ratio of officers once we hit that critical mass.
And that's what that minimum was setting, basically, was the standard for that in the possible future. I do remember that conversation. I remember why we had the minimum now.
Well, but I think if we come back, we
That's
come back
fine.
and we mess with paragraph A at that point.
Yeah, that's fine. Is everybody good with the change for as defined, or as described in paragraph A?
Yeah, that's fine.
Does that make it kind of circular, though?
It's redefining it, but it also adds the rest of paragraph D
Yeah.
on the bottom of it. It's basically restating
So-
it in the context of paragraph D.
So this
You
basically,
could lose the entire first sentence of paragraph D and not change any, you know what I mean?
True.
I mean, do you guys just want to strike first sentence of paragraph D? I mean, that works too.
That way it says it once in the ordinance and we're done.
All right, well, let's move.
Yeah.
We got more to do here.
So let's strike first sentence, paragraph D. Jim, just make sure we do that between now and then. So, any additional comments, questions, concerns by council?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Up next, we have, what is this? Oh, this is ordinance 16-2025. It is the repeal of chapter 18 of the city code entitled Campaign Finance. The idea behind this is if you look at the resolution 2025-07, one of the legislative priorities, and that is basically saying a re-overhaul of what elections look like in Taneytown. If you ever had the experience of dealing with the campaign finance section, it was definitely not written for a municipality of 8,500. Its requirements are actually stricter than a municipality of Westminster, for instance. But anyways, I'm looking for a motion in regards to that.
Motion to introduce.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Additional comments, questions, concerns by council?
I don't understand why we need to repeal the existing ordinance first.
We have a great danger of inviting outside influences, special interests to come into the town and contribute to a particular candidate for a particular need. And it's the purpose of the ordinance originally was to maintain our elections as local elections and not be influenced by major political parties or special interest groups.
Yeah,
So
I think we're in
that's why it
alignment
was
there.
there.
Yeah, we're in alignment.
We're
with
in
it.
alignment there.
This is,
Get rid of this.
We want to keep all that nonsense out.
We won't have any protection at all.
Well, that's
think-
what I
no,
mean.
speaking
Our
of
next
somebody-
election isn't
is
for 2 years.
Yeah,
This is basically,
right. Like,
this
so
is
it
basically
doesn't even
holding you guys
matter.
accountable that something has to get.
Well, I would rather see something left in the code and come up with alterations first, before you take this out. No, this is the wrong way to do it. You don't want to repeal this legislation and then have nothing.
I'm gonna be honest with you, you can't alter campaign finance to make sense
You
in
could,
Taneytown.
but until you have a replacement ready in hand, you can't just simply take this out. Because what happens if we don't enact something else? Then there's no rules.
Well, our campaign finance section has so many loopholes. It's ridiculous. There's so many gray areas. It needs to be reworked
I'm not
completely
saying
from the
I'm
ground
not
up.
saying that it doesn't, Rachel. I'm just saying that we can't go and delete the current ordinance without a replacement.
So you're telling me within 2 years, we cannot get,
No, he's not.
I mean,
What I'm saying is, if something happens and we all get run over by a
saying you
bus and
should-
nothing
I
is
know what
ever
you're saying,
enacted,
but,
you,
like,
you don't have anything. And so it's a bad idea to completely repeal the existing ordinance until you have a replacement.
Here's what I would say, regardless, let's say you guys forget to even address it or something. Let's say you keep it in, you forget to address it, next election cycle comes along, I'm gonna tell you, this 100% discourages people from running. I mean, I know this election in particular, we had people discouraged from running just because of, you can't make sense of that ordinance. And
Not disagreeing.
again, in my opinion, this is,
It's a mess.
this is basically putting it on the legislators that they need to do something within 2 years. I mean, if they don't, then people get to run elections. I know the idea is what happens if outside influence comes in. I'm gonna tell you, you can already do that in the campaign finance. Because it is not written in a conducive way that makes sense. It is not written in a conducive way that would actually bars anybody from doing anything.
Not arguing the point.
But
What I'm saying is, it's just a bad idea to repeal it without having a replacement in place.
Full of bad ideas.
Certainly could do a repeal and replace within a,
Yeah.
you know, a
I
single
think
ordinance.
if we craft a new one and do a repeal and replace, I think that's the way to go. But I wouldn't want to pull this ordinance out without having some replacement in.
So if you want to play the worst-case scenario game, is it the worst case that if you were to go with a repeal-replace approach in a single ordinance, the worst case, council does nothing, 2 years from now, we have the existing campaign finance ordinance, or if you repeal and don't replace, and then worst case, you can't agree on something in 2 years, then you have nothing. So which is the worst-case scenario for you? And
if I were
think
to,
your
if I were to
decision on
answer you
that
honestly,
is what
it's
should drive
actually,
the
it's actually
decision.
better not to have campaign finance. Because the campaign finance ordinance is, I'm trying to think of a good term to use that isn't
I
offensive.
will say some cities don't have one.
It doesn't, yeah, well, I'm gonna tell you, when I look at the other municipalities, Taneytown is one of the few with a campaign finance ordinance, and our campaign finance ordinance is structured after the state for state elections, because apparently the council who put this in didn't do their, what I would say, due diligence to make sure it makes sense for a small municipality. This 100% disincentivizes people to run. And again, your idea, my thing would be, I'd prefer more people to run than less people to run. If your idea is outside influence and money's gonna come into play, I mean, I think that's why this happened before this ordinance was put into place, if I'm familiar correctly, and it didn't work out. I mean, I think what happened was people, I don't want to say they wanted to scare people away from running for office, but that's what it feels like this ordinance was intended to do. Because there isn't a paragraph in the campaign finance that I probably couldn't find an error with that doesn't conflict.
Well, yeah, while I was not city manager at the time that this was developed, there certainly was a campaign cycle prior to the city having campaign finance regulation where there was significant investment in a campaign and no one knew where the money came from. That was the trigger. Certainly the reaction may have been stronger than absolutely necessary, but the city has seen an influx of funding to campaigns with, you know, and the idea, I think, in broad terms was just make sure people know where the money is coming from to support the candidates. So perhaps it is overly complicated or unclear in some areas, and I think we've hashed that out over the last couple of years. But again, the question, I guess, is,
Of course, that might be
You know.
the design of this whole thing, is to hide the money, so, you know.
well, so the question, again, back to the question, you know, if there's any consideration to a repeal, replace, ultimately it's up to the council to come to agreement on putting something new in to replace this.
And again, I know it's on the legislative priority for for it to be prepared and presented a replacement for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a, if I'm,
No
if
problem
I-
maintaining it on the priority, but
if
I don't
I'm,
use,
if I'm correct, it's on the 90-day priority, it might be the 120, but either way, this is a priority to get replaced. I mean, I could care less one way or the other, but there is no doubt in my mind that campaign finance does not work in its current form in any way, shape, or form. As far as whatever the intent was, I mean, I just saw last election where you definitely weren't, counted for the money or where it was coming from. But it,
Instead of a full repeal, could it be a suspension until some particular date if nothing is done, and then it goes back into effect? Like, say, worst case scenario, but yeah, it's like a safety mechanism, right? Like, you could say, okay, it's suspended until such a date that
the safety
council has
mechanism is that it
done
won't even
whatever.
come into play for another year at a
Well, right,
minimum,
like,
you
I mean,
know?
a lot of this is kind of moot because, like, there's no election for 2 years anyways, but like, if
Yeah,
if
so
the objection
why bother?
is, well, if I feel like if the objection is that people are afraid of, outside influences, outside money and all that, well, if we have a provision in here saying, okay, well, if nothing is done, then this comes back, then I think that's another way to lit a fire up on our butts, because I think a lot of us, I mean, myself, having just done it, knows it's a nightmare, and there's a lot of stupid stuff in there, and I'd like to see it overhauled.
Yeah, I'm not
I mean,
arguing
honestly-
that point. I'm just saying that you don't, it's
It
not,
could be
never a
a-
good idea to repeal this, something like, at least you have some structure and some rules, and if you repeal it, you got nothing. What happens in that meantime, between, the time that it's repealed and you replace it?
It could be a good test of the temporary suspension and temporary administrative suspension. Because that puts it in a 60-day window to get fixed, talked about, whatever, but again, that's, I don't know if anything, that's a big one to touch. That's gonna require, that one's gonna require time, and time if you
I was
want,
gonna say,
time
I'd
if you
rather have
want it-
more than the 60
I was gonna say,
days.
time if you want it to do what it's intended to do,
Yep.
in a way that is conducive to elections.
But the existing ordinance does not need to be repealed to do that. And the proper way to
Well-
do this would be to come up with your new legislation, fix the issues, fix the problems, and do a repeal and replace. But to leave us without any regulation at all, for whatever length of time, just invites trouble.
I'm relatively indifferent.
I think we're better on the repeal and replace. I don't like, this feels like we're going naked.
Sorry?
I said, this feels like we're going naked. And so we've already got it in the resolution to do
Yep.
this.
Yep.
Let's do it.
Right, you further down the line here, we have a
Yeah.
resolution to go ahead and do it. Make sure we go ahead and do it.
I understand that this was to light a fire, but that's a little warm fire.
It's already
My-
burning, Harry.
My thing is, just to be completely honest, is the town is better without campaign finance. Because undoubtedly, that ordinance, the only thing it restricts is your ordinary person who doesn't understand what that ordinance says. That is the only person it's restricting.
Hide money, you could.
I mean, this ordinance does literally nothing it's intended to do. And no offense to people who adopted it or anything like that, but you adopted a state campaign finance in a municipality. So that's just my remarks on it. Did we already, we didn't.
You
do
have a motion
or
and
anything,
second
right?
on the floor.
Did we?
Sorry, what was that?
He didn't
Nick
move
and
yet.
Rachel.
We
Okay.
moved and had a second for introduction, but we
So
have
you do
not
need
voted
to
on it.
vote.
Well, everybody good on question, comment, concerns? All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Hey.
Dead. Oh, the water and sewer rates, okay. Ordinance 17-2025, water and sewer rates. Basically, this ordinance is saying that there will be a yearly workshop dedicated to water that'll happen in, what does it have, April of each year, starting with a 5% reduction currently, which is something that's already in the budget and being worked on elsewhere. The workshop shall be advertised, and the city administration should take all measures necessary, basically, to make sure that the public is aware and attendance is as best as it can be. The idea is to make people aware of what is going on with water as best as we can and make informed decisions at the workshop every year. Whether that be an increase, a decrease, stay the same. The idea is just to try to get people involved with the water and sewer. And again, if the 5% cuts, if we have to readdress that here, that's where it would be addressed when staff can bring adequate reasoning to the floor for it. Looking for a motion in regards to it.
Motion to introduce.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns by council?
Will the reduced rate fund the enterprise fund, or will it be in a deficit position?
Well, it's definitely not going to be in a deficit position from what we had talked about earlier. It's just going to be making 5% less than it currently does.
I think amounted to about $130,000 less.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that
About
150-ish, give or take.
Yeah, I think it was like
It might have been 170, like
it was like 168 or
Generated
169.
by the users of the water and sewer system,
Yeah,
so we're concerned about that.
I think we
It's
covered
not-
it.
it's
I think
not-
We covered it
It's not
earlier.
we
fair
covered
to
all that.
have property owners subsidize the water and sewer rates. Renters.
Sorry, that doesn't make sense to
Where
me.
does that come from?
They'd pay for that through pass-through.
Sewer, their individual usage. Renting are not.
Well, but it's pass-through, though. You pay for it either through, whether
Really
it's
depends on your landlord.
bundled into your rent or whatever. Like you're not, if you're a landlord, right, and you're not covering these expenses, like you can't be a landlord for very long.
Up to the landlord to decide what to do about that.
Sure.
Yeah, when I was renting, I actually was
But
paying water.
regardless, an enterprise fund needs to stand on its own. You have to
Yes.
have enough revenue
Yes, of course.
Yes,
to pay the bills to run the water and sewer department.
yes,
And that's the question I asked. Do we have enough revenue
Yes.
to pay
Yes.
the bills?
yes.
We covered that.
The utility budget is
And I have
balanced
a
as
question.
presented.
Like that can actually be, can that be seen in this utility fund chart that we have, this one? If I were to reduce revenues by 5% and do math, right? Is that basically where that would get me? Well, it's sporadic because it looks like it's the quarterly payment, right? So like you don't get very many payments for 2 months, but then you get the bulk of payments in 1 month. So like really you're netting out 3 months by quarterly is what it looked like to me when I was reading this earlier. And okay, so yeah, I think very quick math earlier, right? It was like up by, I don't know, 800 or something and drops to like 6 is basically what and that's 3 quarters. So you're probably talking like 750K over.
And just to focus, I mean, we already talked about the reduction in rate earlier. This main part is mainly just going over the water system, essentially,
Really
or
don't
not
audit
the review workshop yearly. It's basically just putting in a mandated workshop yearly in April to present a comprehensive plan from the staff of, what their recommendation of, where we're sitting, yada, yada, yada. And so council can make an informed decision of whether they should raise rates, lower rates, or maintain the same rates. Again, the 5%, in my opinion, is more of just a reprieve while that is going on.
Right. I mean, because as I read this, I've gone back to the front page of the budget. Right, we have about $2.7 million in projected revenue, and about $2.7 million in projected expenses. So right now, to answer your question, that's balanced in terms of water and sewer fee revenue versus water and sewer costs, operational costs.
Balance it here.
Right. So what isn't in that balance is we have debt service on the water and sewer, and so that's $900,000 plus that is not covered. So how does that get paid?
Deficit is made up by property taxes, that's where it comes from. Property owners are burdened with a higher property tax rate, subsidizing the water and sewer department. The people are using that. If you're using water and sewer, you need to pay the bill for water and sewer. So that's the only point that I'm trying to make. It needs to stand on its own, it needs to fund itself. And when I left office the last time, we were able to do that. Something happened in the last 6 years that we aren't able to do that. Again, the state law requires us to have.
Sorry, what do you mean we aren't able to do that?
Just so you're aware, it is currently balanced.
It requires us to have enterprise funds that are independently sustainable. They can't be subsidized by property taxes, which is what's happening now.
Jim, is our water currently being subsidized by property taxes?
We've been meeting the operating budget with the user fee, with the
Right.
water and
Yeah,
sewer
for the
user
last
rates.
however many years, right?
There, with the exception of debt service. So
Right.
where we have borrowed money for capital projects, again, because we're not building enough reserve to pay for the maintenance at times.
Right.
Right,
So that's the number that stands out.
Right. We have used fund balance to pay debt service for capital projects. So that kind of goes back to, I think, the structural problem with the system and the charges that, the operating revenue, the water and sewer user rates should be generating enough money that it can pay for those capital expenses too, for those big repair projects. The only thing it shouldn't pay for is building additional capacity. That should be charged to developers. But the maintenance of the system, including money we have to borrow to maintain the system or have had to borrow in the past, really should be paid by the user rates. And we take money from utility fund balance to pay debt service. And that has varied from year to year. But as a budget tool, we do that to maintain the rates so that we don't have to raise the rates. And then hopefully we tend to budget with a under-promise, over-deliver kind of mentality. We would rather budget conservatively on the revenue and a little bit more worst case on the expenses and then come out, with a surplus than the other way around. I mean, ideally, it's going to net, it'll be, a perfect world, it'll come out perfectly. We spend exactly what we expected, everything cost exactly what we expected, but that's not very realistic. So.
But we've got the 7.6 million that's dedicated for capital, or for capital improvements.
Right.
So we're using that to pay the debt on the capital improvements.
On some previous ones.
Okay, but we have in the past, yeah.
Yes.
So it's working the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, that's what.
Well, it's a little convoluted because there's been some refinancing and things like that, so it's really hard to go back and track exactly what projects were which. So we're still carrying debt from the wastewater treatment plant when it was constructed. I believe that debt's probably been refinanced into something else at this point. But that would be, okay, that's an example of we were under a consent order with the Department of the Environment because our old plant was overflowing regularly. Whenever it rained, the plant would overflow. So we had to fix it. So the new plant was designed to, meet current nutrient removal standards at the time, but then also to allow for growth. So the additional cost associated with building a plant with a larger capacity was supposed to be paid for by impact fees, benefit assessment fees. The cost of replacing the plant with the existing capacity was supposed to be paid for by a base fee that was charged for a couple years. So a scenario like that, there was a capacity enhancing part of it that was paid for by the benefit assessment, the other piece. And as the city grew, we did start collecting more base fee revenue than was projected. But very quickly, people tired of the base fee, and even though the base fee was intended to be applied for the life of the loan, within a few years, people were complaining about, this base fee was supposed to be temporary, and it was, but it was 20 years temporary, not 5 years temporary. And that's basically, there were some arguments made at the time, and I'm going off on a tangent a little bit here, but bear with me.
A lot of history here, so we gotta need a history lesson.
A workshop would
So
really.
the argument at the time was everybody paid the same base fee. It was originally, presented as everybody has a share of the system. Everybody uses the system, and the base fee gave everybody an equal share. The argument against that was the little old widow, that lives alone, hardly uses any water, is paying the same thing as a family of 7 who uses a lot more water, or typically might. So the rates were adjusted so that they were revenue neutral. So we did away with the base fee and increased the rates so that it was, the same amount of revenue coming in, so we could still pay the bills. So we continued for many years to borrow money for capital projects because they had to be done and we didn't have time to save for it.
Yeah.
So some of those projects did enhance capacity. We did an interceptor line where we got rid of 12-inch line and replaced it with 18, so that increased the capacity. So monies from impact fees from developers were used for part of that. Fund balance, utility fund balance was probably used for part of it. So for some projects, that is using that benefit assessment money is the appropriate avenue to use. In other projects, it should be coming from the surplus that the user rates generate above the annual operating expenses, because it's not building new capacity, it's just a maintenance project.
Okay, and we are still in a surplus
So,
above.
yes, so
Okay.
I'm
And
not
just to go back to-
saying it's
just to
gonna
go back to the
bankrupt the
property
city.
tax- Just to go back to the property tax thing. Property tax is not being used to cover that. It's coming out of the utility fund,
We,
which,
right.
for the capital projects, which is what it's supposed to be used for anyways.
Many years ago, the enterprise fund was subsidized by general fund revenue in the
Yeah, the early
mid-90s.
2000s. I remember talking with Daryl about that one.
When I first came on council, water rates were very low, and they were, I think, subsidized by the utility fund, and that was the way it was done, I think, in 96, 97, and at that point, it was like, hey, we shouldn't be doing this, it needs to pay for itself.
Yeah.
And that was the first big rate
But,
adjustment.
but where
But
I'm-
currently, we're not using general fund revenue tax dollars to
Yeah, I was gonna say,
supplement.
that's,
It all comes
mostly,
from
yeah,
utility.
where I was going was, we are still in a surplus with the income to outgo on the rates. So we are still putting into that fund.
I don't think so. Not as you read this, right now, the water service fees, 950,000, and the sewer service fee, 101,866. So there, you're, 2.8 million, right? And your water and sewer expenditures are about 2.8 million. So, then you've got standpipe rental and late payment fees and some interest income, and that, would take away the debt service on the water side. But what you still end up with is $565,000 as debt service that isn't covered anywhere, and we're pulling money out of the, fund balance to cover that debt service.
Which is for capital projects, which is what
Okay, so
which is what the utility fund is for.
all right. I just want to make sure that we're all talking about the same numbers.
Yeah.
So, yes, the water, what we're charging for water and sewer pays for our costs for water and sewer, but there are these other costs that are not, not being recouped.
Yeah,
We're
I
having to
understand what
pay
you're
out of fund balance. But for how long can we go on pulling $800,000 out of fund balance to pay this debt service?
Well,
How
and
much
that-
are we
that's
putting
what I was
into
kinda
fund
getting
balance?
at earlier when I asked to see kind of like these cash flow projections, projected
Yeah,
out. 'Cause you can make reasonable inferences on like what are my expected expenses for capital projects? What's the debt service rate, right? Like you can put all of that in a model, and we can see it projected out for like 5 or 10 years.
Budget.
Exactly, yeah. So like that's what I was saying I'd like to see, because right now it looks to me like we have the money and fund to do whatever we need to do, and like I'd like to reduce the rate for next year, and then hopefully that can give staff time to prepare the thing that I asked for, so that we can make a more long-term, or have a long-term idea to understand what these cash flows are, and if we need to change the rates or do something to make sure that the money jives, right, then we make that next year. Like, and we would have to reassess this on a yearly basis, right? So like, again, that gives staff time to get all these numbers for us, so we can sit here and do what we're doing now and nitpick at it and go through their models.
And that's what essentially this is creating
Yeah.
that mechanism for once a year. Again, that gives it gives a whole year for staff to basically compile this information, present it, and then for council to make its determination based on that information, as well as giving the public time and a chance to actually see what all goes into it.
Yeah. Because a lot of people don't understand
No.
like the water stuff. I mean,
They don't, and it's not to their fault. I mean, it
No,
is
it's hard.
complicated. I mean, look at us up here talking about it. My thing would be basically, again, I'm a proponent of this workshop. I think it's a good way to get people involved if they want to be involved in what's going on with the water system. And the 5% is really a reprieve until we can have that workshop.
Yeah.
That gives staff a year to get all this together, which I don't think is unrealistic for them to do a real comprehensive overview of what all this is.
But was the 5% in the budget already?
yes.
It's in the current budget, yes.
Yeah,
so-
all right,
okay.
but, so, all right, all that aside, I mean, eventually we have to address the idea that the fund balance is a cash cow that we can keep pulling out of because it's
Can't do
not
it forever,
growing.
though.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not, without growth in the city, that fund balance isn't going anywhere. Except down.
Correct.
So, the other issue that I have with this ordinance is, it says effective immediately upon passage of this ordinance, is reduced by 5%.
I mean, this will
Is that,
basically, this will be in conjunction with everything else. I mean, if one thing gets shot down, I mean, what really does it is the fiscal year ordinance.
well, I mean, does this really require an ordinance to change that, or can?
No, we
is
can
this a-
strike section 1, and then section 2, I believe you should codify the annual water system review
No
workshop.
problem with that.
Because I believe
Right.
if you're gonna make mandatory reporting, you need to make it in the code.
But I think, can we not do the rate reduction as a resolution as opposed to an ordinance?
Yeah, that's what we do, well, no,
I don't-
because
Well,
our rate
the
has to be
actual
passed.
rate
Yeah, it
is
has
an
to be passed
ordinance.
in ordinance form.
But-
And that's what this is right here. is the
and
ordinance
we did that
07,
already.
25.
All right, so then we need to,
And that's gonna be adjusted for the 5%, and the budget already
all right,
has the 5%.
but then we
But
don't
we
need to
can
do
take out-
this,
yes, we
we
can
don't
take
need to
out-
have this section 1 in here then.
We can take out section 1,
Yeah,
so
that's,
let's go ahead and
it's
act.
kind of a redundancy in that.
Let's go ahead and act section 1, make section 2 section 1, and that basically puts into place the annual workshop at least.
Yes.
Which is, again, that is the main intent of this, because we've already covered everything else in the operating budget and the water and sewer rates. Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Did we already do motion, right? Jim, did I already do motion?
Did we
think-
move
I
on
think-
that?
Yeah.
Harry
We're in
moved,
discussion.
Nick
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking for additional comment, question, concern before I go to vote. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Hey,
Carries.
I would like to just point out real quickly before we move on that we have hired consultants Davenport to do a rate study for the city in years past. We haven't necessarily stuck with the recommendations, but we also didn't do all of the capital projects that were intended or that were planned at that point in time. But that may be something for us to consider revisiting, to have somebody who has expertise in setting rates
Making these
and
models, yeah.
evaluating the the revenue stream, the potential inflationary factors, as well as the capital projects plan, and have somebody who really specializes in this come in and do an evaluation for us. It's not cheap, but, it delivers a really good product. So just food for thought.
Cool, thank you.
Next up, we have adoption resolution 2025-07, legislative priority. This is basically setting a 6-month priority for legislative items. There's a whole host of items. Again, this is basically setting a priority for staff to work on and present to council. New items, new ordinances, basically get stuff on your radar for the next 6 months. And then after 6 months,
I guess my question is, do we really need a resolution for that?
I think it sets you guys on the path, essentially. If this is the items that staff has been instructed to prepare over the next 180 days, and then in it also says at the, at the term of the 6-month legislative agenda, basically a retreat of council to propose the next 6-month legislative agenda. It basically keeps a cycle of legislative items on your guys' track.
I just don't think we need.
To me, this is just a project list of, these are the things that we want to work on. It can be amended, changed however we need to, but, I think project lists and where something's at, in like a progress chart of some kind I know for me, it makes it very, very useful because, I'm a very disorganized person, and sometimes I need a little bit of organization in my life to make sure we stay on track. So for me, that's what this is about.
And this isn't committal. This is basically saying this is items that you want presented over the next 6 months. The idea is I mean, I can have staff working all this, but you guys having a resolution that really sets it out, sets a 6-month timetable for all of this. You don't have to approve, you don't have to deny. It basically is just going to put it onto your agenda over the next 6 months. And in that
So that these are priorities, and hey, give us the information.
in that regard, it also allows residents to kind of see where your focus is over the next 6 months.
Yeah, I just don't know that we need a resolution for that. Establish a list of the things we want to do without having a resolution to do it. We talk a lot about wanting to keep government, within its bounds and borders, and, we really need to create a resolution to make a to-do list.
I mean, in the fairness, though, that's the reason why nothing is
I
getting.
mean, nothing but this is a different council, this is a new day, right? So,
I want to be called out if we're not getting anything done, right? Also my thinking is like, hey, saying to the public, people watching, like, hey, these are things that we're working on getting done. If we're not getting these things done, then come yell at me. That's kind of one of the other ways that I look at it, because.
Let's get to motion so we can go motion to discussion. Looking for a motion in regards to it?
Motion to introduce.
This will be a motion to adopt. Resolution.
adopt, sorry.
Yeah,
Adopt the
resolution.
same night. Looking for a second?
Second.
Comments, questions, concerns by council. Now let's start that. I mean, sorry, just. What's up, Jimmy?
Part 2.
Oh, mercy, okay.
Just a quick
Part one was sufficient.
clarification on the within 90 days establishment of a Main Street committee. Just to clarify, that's
That's
to
more
have a
framework.
framework.
Yes, framework.
That we may not have a
let's revise
volunteer
that to be
body
clear there.
staffed by that time.
Let's do
So-
establishment of a framework for Main Street Committee.
Okay, thank you.
Let's change that. Again, the main point of this is so residents can look of, this is a timeline of things you guys are looking to get done. This kind of keeps staff as well on track of what they need to be presented to council over the days. Because again, I could always shoot blindly with staff and just throw some stuff on your guys' agenda, or you guys can come up with stuff. Again, I know we've already talked about the idea of getting stuff on with the administrative suspension, but this is basically a timetable of, I think, and again, it could be we get to it, staff presents it, nobody likes the idea, you shoot it down. But I'd rather not be shooting in the dark with staff, trying to figure out what to put on your guys' agenda that you might like. This kind of gives us a guideline of what to get on there and when to try to get it on there. It basically sets priority goals. I mean,
Guys.
additional comments, questions, concerns by council? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Carries. Next up, we have a resolution for the dedication of the police department to Daryl G. Hale. Basically, this has given staff the ability to work on this, saying that council is behind the idea of it. And again, there's going to be obviously some expenditure behind a plaque, dedication ceremony, everything like that.
Are we dedicating the building to, or the entire department?
I was looking.
If we're,
Yeah, let's change that to
Can we make
police
that-
department building.
Yeah, it's the building.
That's a good catch.
everybody has to wear a
That's
little
a
patch
good
with a
catch.
picture of Daryl on it. Daryl on the side.
Dude, to be fair, I know he'd have a good laugh over it, that's for sure.
That he
Get a
would.
mural in the, yeah.
But
Just being clear.
again, talk with staff, talking with Kim, I think this is a fitting dedication for what he pursued when he was a public official.
Jimmy gives you something to do with all that stuff in Daryl's office you don't know what to do with.
Yeah, but I know, when I was talking with Kim, one of the things I really want to do is get a copy of his governor's citation, because if you've ever talked with Daryl, he was very proud of his governor's citation for his safety committees and whatnot. So, again, the idea behind this resolution is just the council's back and that we're good to work on this and make some expenditures in regards to it.
Yep.
I'm looking for a motion,
Motion to adopt.
looking for a second.
Second.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. It is carried. Next up, monthly newsletter. So if there was a change in this and it didn't make it into your guys' packets, Jim, do you want to go over what the change was? The change was basically, there would be initial distribution to mailboxes that allowed you to opt in for mail. So if you don't want it, if you're not going to use it, then don't opt in. That'll save the city money. But we do still want to provide the service. So yes, you can opt in for the mail one, or again, we're going to be providing it online as well. The change basically says, Jim, you want to go over what that change from the current one is?
I'm not going to try to do it from memory, so.
And this isn't, again, this isn't going to be anything extravagant. This is a newsletter just going out with some basic information.
But again, I don't know why we need to have a resolution for it. We just direct staff to do it. I'm just.
Well, the resolution binds staff into doing it. I mean, realistically, you should do a resolution for,
Not that I'm not opposed to it, just trying to make sure.
Letters shall resume publication beginning June 2025. It shall be initially distributed via mail to all addresses within zip code 21787 and shall be distributed no later than the 5th of each month.
and the
So
reason
we
we do.
deleted the word monthly in the first sentence, I believe. And we added initially.
Not initially, yep. And again, the idea between the 21787 is if you've ever been to our events, we do have a lot of people from the surrounding area that take part in it, people who are actively involved in our city from the outside area. The idea is to just make sure if they want to be aware of the events we're having, that they can be aware of the events we're having. Because I'm going to tell you, when they come to our events, if we put up the Main Street events, for instance, those are people who will also shop at our businesses.
I'm no opposition whatsoever to the entire plan. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
we really need a resolution for it.
Again,
That's all. I'm
I prefer it in resolution form because commits us more than just going around doing a consensus.
And another change there was the original version talked about it being in mailboxes, I think, by a certain time,
By
and we
fifth,
changed it
yeah.
to be distributed by.
Distributed for,
Yeah, just distributed, because, you know, that could be in the mailbox, that could be online. But the idea is to have an online version for those who don't need it in the mailbox, and an opt-in to save the money from sending to everybody.
I think my only question, it says to beginning June 2025. Like, is that a problem for you guys? Do you have the capacity to do that?
I
'Cause
know
that is
originally,
fairly quick.
the idea was that we had the capacity to do it, but Jim, I'll let you, I mean, we can,
As long as it's, and the content is laid out here, it's something that we used to do, so
Yeah,
it shouldn't be too big of a hurdle.
it's
Now,
really, there's no
postage is
big
not in the
change.
budget for this. We cut postage to fund some of the other stuff, so we need to figure that out.
Sure.
The idea would be if you guys approve this, we'd go back for a budget amendment. And that's why we kind of wanted a resolution form too, because that's the committal, because our next thing is going to be looking at budget amendment. The most expensive part is going to be that initial mailing.
Sure.
Other than, any additional comments, questions, concerns? Sorry, it's been a long night of a lot of different stuff.
I'm
Did we
lost
get
too,
a
don't worry
first
about
and
it.
second?
She did the
You're-
motion to adopt, like, we're into the discussion
Okay, we're in
part, so
discussion,
now
good.
it's the
Just
vote.
making sure.
Oh.
You never know
Yeah,
what
we
part
had
of
to,
this
we had to
we're in.
get to discussion because we started discussion
think we
before the
did that.
discussion.
Sometimes we start the discussion
I don't think we
before-
did one for the newsletter.
I don't
That was
think-
for Daryl, that I,
Yeah, Rachel did. Daryl.
Clara, straighten us out. What we got?
Okay,
No motion on the
looking for
floor.
a motion.
Motion to adopt the resolution.
Looking for a second.
okay, second.
Additional comments, questions, concerns by council?
Oh, please, God, no.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Carries. Next one, I know this is one some of us have talked about for a long time now, public comment at Monday meetings. Obviously, we're not the crowd drawers we used to be, but there's really there's no reason we can't have public comment at both meetings. I think it serves a good public interest. It allows people to participate if they weren't able to come Wednesday, or if they're not able to come that Monday, they can go that Wednesday. Really gives people options, and we're never so pressed for time, except for maybe this meeting, to where we couldn't entertain a lot of public comment. I mean, again, we always have space for it. And I'll tell you, I can't speak for the council, but I encourage public comment. If you're looking to do it, you know, people will say, I don't rein in people on the 3 minutes. My thing is we're here for you. If you got something to say, well, let's just say it. And again, this is mainly just to really reopen that. Again, I know, Councilmember Tillman, you know, we've talked about this, and
I would actually
time
like to
passes.
add to this that, on, you know, during the workshop meetings, that comment be allowed
On
on
each
item by item
Yeah.
basis. I'd like to see
yeah,
that
I
added
had
to
brought
this.
that up too.
Yeah.
Before we vote on this, I'd like to see that redone and have that added.
So let's do public comment during Monday and Wednesday council meetings. Let's allow public comment to each individual agenda item. Good with the team?
I'm good with that. You want to rewrite that, and then
Yeah.
we'll redo this in the meeting coming up next week?
Well, we can, I mean, do you guys just want to say adopt as amended? Because you can amend it
Let's just-
now.
Let's just wait, I mean, I can wait till the next meeting. Let's just,
We have a meeting next week. It's
let,
not
you know,
an
let,
amendment.
let's
Not the end of
get
the
the
world.
thing written correctly.
It's a
and then we'll
resolution,
vote
it's
on
not
it.
like an
Oh,
ordinance. so.
that's,
Everybody
fine.
okay with that?
Sorry, I'm actually confused where we're at right now. Are we?
we're
so-
adding the-
He wants to add it to where we,
I got that part. I'm
so
confused about,
technically, you
can,
guys,
or-
you guys can
Oh.
adopt it now on the basis that adopt as amended with language
Yeah.
that says each individual agenda item at Wednesday, which staff would just get that, they'd get it over to me, I'd sign it, or we can just wait. I mean, either works.
Or we can just get the full language and just do it next week real quick.
Yeah, let's just
Yeah,
do it
like,
next week
why
with
don't we
the full
just do it
language.
next week?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
when
fine
we
with
get the
whatever you guys
language,
want to do.
All right.
Sounds good.
It does the same thing, right?
Well, that's what
Like,
the,
it's the same effect.
the result's the exact same.
Yeah. so
Yes,
like,
exactly. It
let's-
doesn't
let's
change
get the
anything.
language and, yeah.
Okay. Jim, city manager report.
Well,
Oh, actually, I need a motion to table it, don't I? Or can we just? The
I
resolution.
don't think we had a motion
Yeah, we don't even have a
intro-
motion to intro.
yeah,
to
there's no
pass it.
motion to adopt.
or approve it, rather.
Fine with whatever. So just put it on the agenda. Yeah. City manager report.
Hours ago?
Yeah, anything, has
I was
anything
going to
changed?
say, I know you guys all heard the first version, so if there are any questions, be happy to field them.
Any additional questions, comments, concerns for the city manager? Hearing none, I'm proceeding forward. New business, monthly financial report. Not sure if anybody had a chance to look through what our financial reports look like. I know this is new to some of you, so feel free to ask Jim.
I'll ask them in private later.
A lot of stuff.
I mean, it's,
There's a lot of stuff in there, and I haven't had time to comb through it all.
you guys want to wait till the 21st on it? I mean, we have a meeting on the 21st.
Yeah, I know, but does this need to be approved now, Jim, or?
I don't think
It should be approved this month.
Just during the month, okay. Yeah, we can wait. If
Jim,
you
let's
you guys
move
want a
it.
chance to look at it first, yeah, we can wait.
Jim, let's move it to 21st.
Okay. I mean, I just usually go through it and look for things that jump out, you know.
I mean, it's,
Most of it is,
The material items.
Right.
yeah,
once you guys do it once, it'll
yeah.
flow the next
Most of it
time.
is just mundane as all get out, but, you know, like I say, every once in a while you come through.
You find something. to
Well,
bring
yeah,
up
you're right, everyone's, and you look for the things that jump out at you, it's like, oh, wait a minute, what's
I
this?
forgot what that was.
The check register is a lot more fun to look at than the rest of the
Oh,
report.
yeah, that's what I like looking at, the checks.
Accounts payables, same thing, do you guys wanna, have you guys had a chance to?
And I did go through the accounts payable report earlier today, so I'm okay with it, but if everybody else wants to wait, we can
It's
wait
up
till
to
next
y'all. We
week.
can do it now, we can wait. I mean, we already put something to May 21st.
Don't mind.
Let's put it to May 21st.
Just,
Kick it a week.
I'll just point out, in your accounts payable, take a look at the Whippoorwill Drive Potomac Edison charge. Just $35,000 this month.
Yikes.
So just to put a little perspective on
For which
Sorry,
one?
what
Say
what
that
did you
again?
want to point? Is it this? one?
Whippoorwill Drive, that's the wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, no, these are the checks.
Ah,
Man, you're really trying to make your case here, Jim.
I just want to give a little perspective.
Fair enough. Okay, is everybody good if we move on? I know you guys are looking for it. Up next, we got approval of mowing contract extension for 1 year, Eckers Lawn Service. Again, Jim, this is a contract we already have, right? I mean, it says extension, but.
Correct, right. We
Does
had
anybody-
the option to extend with that contract that was
Any
approved years ago.
issue, Need a motion in regards to it?
Yes.
yeah, this
We do
report.
want-
Yeah, oh, I know we do. I'm saying
yeah,
we need a motion here. Yep.
Yeah.
Move to adopt, okay, I got, Nick with the move to adopt. Need a second?
I got it.
Second.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Go ahead, Tillman.
You beat me to it. Rachel's got the second.
Okay, Rachel's got the second. Comments, question, concerns by council?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Carries. Next up, we have ratification of Meadowbrook Section 6 surety release. Looking for a motion in regards to it. Jim, did you have any comments on it?
Fine.
Is that in the packet? I didn't
Right
see
here.
that.
Oh, shoot.
That's not in the
Might not be,
packet.
actually.
That is not, yeah.
We can, since it's ratification, we can do it for next week if, I apologize if
let's-
that memo
let's-
didn't get in there.
Yeah, it's not in here, so
Yeah,
let's
it's not.
push that.
Okay,
So the
Jim.
next thing I have are the special events permits.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead and push, Jim, that surety is being pushed to May 21st. Approval of special event permit, Taneytown Pride Memorial Park, June 22nd. Looking for a motion in regards to that.
Move to approve.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Additional comments, questions, concerns by council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Carries. Up next, we have approval of special event permit Carroll Kennel Club Fast Cat Coursing Trails, Memorial Park, August 30th and 31st. Looking for a motion in regards to that.
Is there anything in here about cleaning up dog waste, shall we say?
Technically, they have to per ordinance, but, I mean,
Is that,
Does that mean they're actually gonna do
oh,
it?
I mean, does that mean they're actually, I mean, I agree, does that mean they're actually gonna do
unless
it?
the mayor suspends the ordinance, in which case.
Hey,
See what I'm saying?
that's 60 days of no, or 60 days unless you guys convene a meeting the next
60
day.
days of no dog poop.
Yeah,
Listen,
but, you know, but there's a classic example, right, where 60 days, and really any of that, if he suspends the ordinance and dogs poop in the park, there is no mechanism by which we can clean that mess up before it affects somebody. So
Well,
that's,
unless you hold a council meeting the next day, which you can. I mean, all it takes is 3 people. If it's a concern, heck, you guys could virtual in 3 council members and do,
right, but still, you see there, that, I'm just saying as a example, that's, where that kind of thing can go bad, but that's just me bringing that back up.
back to approval of the special event permit, Carroll
Yep.
Kennel Club, Fast Cat, Coursing Trails Memorial Park, August 30th and 31st. Motion? We got a motion from Nick. Need a second?
Second.
Additional comments, questions, concerns by council? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Up next, we have award of bid Riffles Land Storm Drain Installation. Jim, do you got any comments before I look for a motion?
Actually, just to respond to that last one,
The
there
dog
is a
poop.
deposit involved for the special events and an inspection of the park the first business day after, so if they don't clean up, they don't get their deposit back.
How much is their
So
deposit?
there's a stick. Cool.
I think 200, right? Jim, deposit 200?
I said 250.
Good thing
It might
Lorraine
be
is watching.
250. I thought it was 200.
Might be 200.
All right.
If Lorena texts me with it, I'll let
I
you know.
was gonna say,
Honestly,
getting,
we have a Parks and Rec liaison. Parks and Rec liaison?
Sorry, what
What's a,
what just happened?
what's the special event fee, Mr. Liaison?
I don't know.
Just messing with you.
$1 million? That's
That's
right.
Right. Anyway, all right. Moving ahead.
yeah.
Yeah.
200.
200? Okay.
Oh, I can remember.
Thanks, Lorena.
Boom.
I'll have that for you next time.
There we go.
That's
Award,
my line.
award of bid, Riffles Lane Storm Drain Installation. Jim, do you have anything before I go into motion?
So the memo's in the packet. Hopefully, everybody had a chance to read it.
Are we good, solid at the on those references? Because he's way low, and it just
Yeah, did you
that
double
bothers
check that
me.
actually?
Yes.
Okay.
Um,
I remember that one. That was the one that came in, yeah.
Yeah,
I
'cause,
think the highest was like 190 and
Yeah.
and he was.
Yeah, right. Well, you're right.
Half of it, yeah.
yes,
And
there-
there's a whole big spectrum. It's not like there's anybody
Yeah.
any clumping of anything.
Yeah. You wouldn't expect an outlier like that. That stuck out to me too.
DPW did check the references specifically to see if there were if those references experienced change orders and things like that. That was the concern, is that somebody would lowball it and then
Dig for
hit us with a
changes.
bunch of change orders. And the references confirmed that was not the case. They delivered as promised, and they got good reviews from the references when we checked, so that's the recommendation.
Looking for a motion in regards to that? Looking for a second?
Second.
There we go.
Additional comments, questions, concerns by council? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Carries. Public comment pertaining to agenda items.
Welcome back, Paul.
Hi, guys. Hey, I know it's getting late, but I'll be brief. I'll promise to be done by 11 o'clock. Hey, it needs to be said. Tonight was healthy and constructive discussions. Refreshing, real progress. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, two points I wanted to make on the sign code exemption, ordinance number 12. Can a city theme or beautification mural or banner be considered or built into this code change at this time? That's probably something that might come up.
You mean like a beautification?
Something that's, so you've seen a lot of main streets will have,
I would think
Okay.
murals would be an exception and not a sign.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I would think that would be a
To
one-off.
me, that's not covered under the sign ordinance.
okay, so that is a totally different
Yes.
and
I would-
separate
I will,
issue.
okay, well, I will say,
we know
I will
of
say,
some
a mural,
buildings-
I will say a mural can be a sign. So honestly, I will recommend to council, they probably should consider maybe adding the mural exemption into there. Because I will say, my understanding is a mural can be a sign. I mean, you can definitely make a mural into a sign.
Yes.
Whether it's common, I don't know. But
Well, I think.
I get what-
I think a Main Street Advisory Board down
Yeah.
the road would certainly encourage that
I think
as
that's
a
what we
theme.
look for.
And we all know of a couple buildings that could be perfect for that, assuming the building owners would be okay with that. So I'm just thinking of the future and what the potential is.
Okay.
That was mural and statue, you said?
No.
Mural and beautification.
Beautification, okay, got it.
Basically like beautification.
Anything that gives you kind of a good feel about the town, and there's something going on here, you know, that kind of stuff.
Right, we just
I'd
need to
almost-
make, we just need to make sure that we define what a mural is as opposed to an advertisement. Because, you know, painting, just because you painted somebody's ad on the side of the building doesn't make it a mural. Right? So,
I mean,
I think that there need to be a little bit of clarity there and we'll figure out. how to
Probably
make that.
something like
I mean, it could be something just
non-commercial
like on
mural.
the side of
Yeah.
this building.
I mean, you could
Yeah.
always incorporate it to where it basically refers back to whenever we do get the Main Street Code, signs as permitted by the Main Street Code and the Main Street District as an exemption essentially. That would allow them a little bit more wiggle room and play
Yeah.
for.
But yeah, I think that can be handled separately.
Yeah.
I don't think that we.
I
Yeah.
want to throw it out there because I think that's something that will certainly be introduced at some point in time. And related to resolution number 7, the legislative priorities,
Yeah.
it's about time. This sounds like a strategic plan to tackle longstanding issues and concerns. Man, you're putting it on the radar screen. I think this is a good idea, even though I agree with kind of the pros and the cons. I think it's nice to have something on the radar screen that you're always looking at and you're thinking about that you want to be working on. It doesn't get lost in the shuffle and then all the other things that come along. Good night.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank Paul.
Any additional public comment pertaining to agenda items?
Love it, this is great.
Oh,
Before you start, can I just say thank you for waiting through all of this?
Yeah, 2 hours and 45 minutes for public comment, but I'm blessed that Paul only spoke for a minute or two, so I'll be respectful.
On the bright side.
So with the new rules, my name's Alex Kelly. I'm at 28 Bowie Mill. Just wanted to go over some numerical stuff that you guys were talking a great deal about. Just to make sure you know, I know capital projects are an important part for utility funds, but I mean, looking at just inflows and outflows of your revenue stream for water and sewage, you're at 4.8 million compared to your outflows of 3.1. So you should have a surplus of 1.7 per year to allocate to capital projects. That may actually not even be enough based on some of the major things we need to do, or it may be sufficient. The bigger concern is why, as citizens, are we paying for past projects? So thinking I've only been here for, about 4 years, so my water bill is paying for things that we did 10, 15 years ago that we've refinanced at higher interest rates now, and why are we not using any of those funds to clear the slate completely? That way, for the next year, we don't have to consider raising rates, because our budget would be clear. The other thing also with a 5% reduction, if a consumer uses 10,000 gallons, that's only a $10 decline in their bill. So I don't think that's going to make any kind of massive impact to the consumers. And when we talk about water, it is income disparity. What I mean by that, if you're in a higher income bracket versus a lower income bracket, you're paying the same. So as a proportion of a resident's income, it's disproportionate to the lower income bracket versus property tax is usually more proportional to higher income residences themselves. So I'm not saying we need to go ahead and raise property tax. I don't want that. But I'm just saying when we're talking about the grand scheme of things for how our residents, we can't think of, a small section of the residents. We got to think of the town as a whole and what would be a net benefit to the most people, not certain people versus other people. And then lastly, just to kind of go over one really exciting thing with you guys expanding the police force so we can respond to calls throughout the week, we may want to consider also expanding the service area. There are plenty of people that live in Taneytown, but they're not in Taneytown proper, and they're not able to get the services, and they're reliant on the Carroll County Sheriff's Department for that. So if we are going to increase the number of officers, we might want to consider how we can help our fellow residences.
Have an MOU,
So
do we not?
I will say, Chief, do you have any comments on that? I know we do respond to a couple in the local area when we're the first available to respond to them. I know we've done that out at Harney. I know we've done that, I think just recently on Trevanian the other day.
Yes, sir.
Wait,
Routinely respond outside of the area.
So I don't know if it's worthwhile exploring selling our services to Carroll County, because we would be better equipped to respond to those calls to our own town, and we can actually oversight our police department versus Carroll County. We have no oversight in their abilities. So nothing I need answers on, but just something to kind of chew on and marinate with.
I think the biggest thing would be whether the county is willing to part with additional funds. They already do give us money.
And not only that, but the county
So-
sheriff's office is patrolling in town.
Yeah, they do patrol in the
So,
area.
which they hadn't been doing before, so I would be reticent to want
And
to
we've-
try to lay anything else on them.
And we've all,
A revenue stream possibly.
and we've also leaned on their services from time to time. One of the recent ones we're going to be looking at is the drug task force. Get an officer back on there so our chief and our major and our lieutenant can all be part of that board, and we can start. Again, that's kind of the final step as far as what we can do as far as drugs in this area goes. We already got the K-9. We're already making more stops on the streets. Drug task force is the next natural stop. So again, that's something that the Carroll County provides for the most part from when we go into it. The actual cost of it, besides the officer that we provide, is relatively low. But again, we'll talk further on it.
These are just ideas I
Yeah.
want the council to consider as they come on board and existing council. No one's expecting anything to change overnight. It might take months, it might take the rest of the year to make progress, but as long as we're thinking of the residents as a whole, I think that would be the most important focus right there. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Alex. Additional public comment pertaining to agenda items. Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion of adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Are you in a hurry, Harry?
These men have been working all day. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Welcome to the new council. Thank you, everybody, for staying with us tonight.
Yes, thank you all so much for being here. And the young man there, thank you very much. You've been very well behaved and welcome to participating in civic life.
I would have started throwing chairs, man. Get me out of here. Good shit.